Alright, Prince, you're live.
I'm live?
Yeah.
Alright, so third lecture in the Introduction to Python course. This one will be more hands-on and syntax-based. Some of the later classes, the next one will be more hands-on too, but will be based on applications. And then the next, how it functions. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover 5 different topics. One is the input function. Input kind of got mentioned by Adele a little bit, and I thought, if we're going to do if, then, else kind of statements, where we could have multiple results, input seems like a really great way to test if, then statements, so that's why I brought it up. The next section we're going to talk about is Boolean or Boolean logic, which is true or false statements. So you can take two numbers, for example, and test if they're equal or not equal, greater than, things of that nature. We'll get a little bit into if, elif, and else, which talk about how to conditionally execute blocks. We'll talk about what conditional execution means, and then the last thing will be kind of a little bit of a more complex idea based on conditional execution, which is when you iteratively, continuously execute something. So a little bit about the input function. It's really simple. It's typically used in assignments, so you'll have a variable on your left, and then you'll use something like raw input or input with parentheses and then a string in it. And the string is just something to prompt your user. So when you put that in, if you put what is your age as the string in the prompt message, it will say what is your age, and then it will prompt for input, and you can type something in, and the minute you press enter, it will assign it to the variable. There are multiple input functions. The raw input converts it automatically to a string. The input function by itself converts it into Python. So you can get kind of errors from input function. So typically I recommend doing raw input. I think it's safer. But for some of the class lectures, I will be using input when I deal with like true or false. And that's just because I don't want to. It's just shortcut for it. Instead of testing them, we're going to true or false. But you should definitely do that. So let's start off right off the bat. We'll talk about Boolean logic. So Boolean logic is just true or false statements. Python has 2 specific values, true and false, and they're of type Boolean, which is just a separate type. So just like previously we had integers, we also have Boolean types, true or false. And we have certain operations that can be used to test conditions which result in some kind of Boolean object. So in our specific example over here, you have the equals, so it's double equals. A big confusion always is that why is it not single equals? Well, single equals, as we saw from previous lectures, is assignment. Double equals is actually testing. If you use a pound before the equal sign, that's not equal to. So if 1 is not over there, you see 1 not equal to 0. And that would be true. Versus if 1 equals 0, that would be false. You can also test for greater than, less than, means greater or equal to or less or equal to. And those are all the little symbols there. So there's a little bit of some quick examples, and I'll actually let me minimize this real quick. And we will utilize, I think I'll use REPL. We'll use REPLit.
Oops. We'll use REPLit.
Of course, you can do this in Cloud 9. Based on the previous things, but this is just for lecture purposes. Bring this out to the side, and we will just see exactly how it works.
Bring this out to the side, and we will just see exactly how it works.
Where are you?
And come on, where are you?
And the code over here. Note to self, I'm going to put the code on the left side next time.
Note to self, I'm going to put
because it's way easier to put it on the left side. Okay, so on the right side here, we have our typical output or terminal. On the left side,
on the right side here, we have our typical
so we can do number picked
equals picked, number picked equals
and we're using that raw input function, and then we're going to say pick a number. Now the lecture side says input, but I'm going to update that with raw input.
Now the lecture side says
so that number picked is right now a string, and obviously we want to do string comparison with integers in the example, so we can take number picked,
in the example,
and we can use the int function and the number picked,
and we can use the int function and do number picked.
And then we can print the number picked is 1.
We can print the number picked.
And then we can do the Boolean logic here. And if it is true, it should print true. If it's false, it should print false. So if I run this now, it says pick a number on the right side. So we have now a way of
pick a number on the right side,
getting information from the keyboard. We type 1. And it says the number picked is 1, true.
We type 1.
So you can see that it actually can do these type of calculations.
So
what raw input does, so if I didn't have,
it would take
whatever input and convert it directly. It would interpret it directly in Python.
It would take whatever input.
So if I run this code,
it
says pick a number of 1.
Run this code.
It's automatically true. I don't have to do any type conversion. But you do get weird stuff happening where, let's say I type here and I type just a name.
Let's say I type here.
World. It will error out because it's trying to find the world.
It will error out because it's trying to find the world.
Usually you don't want to have Python executing things on the fly from the keyboard, so raw input is safer. So I'm just going to redo that real quick, and that's why I converted it to integer here. And then we can do a few more examples. I'll just do greater than real quick. I'm going to copy paste real quick, take the double equal sign and do greater than, and then I'm going to do 0 as the example. And 0 is not equal to 1, so the first one should be false, and the second one should also be false, right?
So the first one should be false, and the second.
And that's exactly what we get. Right? 2 false statements. Now this concept of testing, what we'd call a test.
Now this concept of testing,
part of the lectures, because what we'll do is we'll execute a test, and then based on that test, we will execute some ladder code.
And then based on that test,
and we'll end up calling that cases. So we'll go down a little more.
So where are we?
Where are we? So another thing is that Boolean logic itself can use 2 other keywords. So the 2 keywords are and or. So we can test like more complicated conditions. So if we're talking about like the and specific keyword, you would have a test condition on the left side, a test condition on the right side, and then and would only return true if both the left and the right are true. So like a great way of seeing that real quick is I'm going to go to the right. There's definitely some more lecture-oriented stuff, but I'll show it real quick here. So let's say that I have a value Chris, and I assign it true, capital T, because it's case sensitive for Booleans. And then I'm going to use my last name, and I'm going to assign it to true. So now if I print,
and I'm going to assign it to true,
Chris, which is a condition, and that's the keyword, Kottmeyer, it should return true.
And that's the keyword, Kottmeyer.
You can test more complicated expressions. If we use the OR keyword, it tests any condition.
If we use the OR keyword,
one of them is true.
It tests.
So I can take my first name and put it to false.
One of them is true.
When I execute it, it's still true because it only requires one condition to be true.
When I execute it, it's still true.
If we have both of them as false,
it
will return false. Because OR tests for one true condition and requires that all conditions are true for them to return true. Otherwise, they're false.
All conditions are true.
There's also this concept of implicit conversion. So implicit conversion, true maps to the number 1. So if I do something like this, 5 times true, true is actually 1 in this context, it should equal 5.
True is actually 1 in this context.
And then let's say we turn it into false. False is mapped to 0. so it automatically turns to 0.
False is mapped to 0, so it automatically turns to 0.
So there is some implicit conversion.
So
other thing that to note is a string does not a string that is a number. So number string
does not a string that is a number.
That's a 1,
so
right? That's a string. And 1 are not equal.
And 1 are not equal.
Do you guys see that? So 1 the string is not equal to 1.
Do you guys see that?
But
so 1 the string is
a decimal
not
is equal to 1.
But
and the reason for that is it's kind of more of a behavioral thing. If you're adding two numbers, generally you're treating them as numbers. So why would you make comparisons that are different? On the other hand, strings are typically things that you have that are shown to the user, and so you usually don't want to have something that's shown to the user more as a visual cue be associated with a number. They don't behave very similarly.
Be associated with a number. They don't behave very similarly.
All right, so any questions so far about that stuff?
All right, so any questions so far about that stuff?
So here's some exercises. I don't know if you guys want to do them.
So here's some exercises.
So this one is a pizza exercise, and the idea is, you're ordering pizza from a store. You're going to ask. You're going to ask for.
You're going to ask.
You're going to first test if it's pizza. So, you'll prompt a user with, does the product have dough? True or false? Does it have sauce? True or false? And then you'll say either based on a set of questions if it's pizza or not.
And then you'll say either based on.
The second part is once you've determined if it's pizza, if it is pizza, then you should return true if it has toppings. If it doesn't have toppings,
then you should return true if it has toppings.
And the thing is, basically, your pizza equation, and you can multiply it by your top is toppings, like Boolean value to determine if it's a pizza and it's also has toppings. And then the last thing is, let's say we really don't like Domino's, we want to override it and always return false if it's Domino's. And now we want to do this without if statements. You can actually do that just purely with Boolean.
Now we want to do this without if statements. You can actually.
Should I give you guys a little, like 5 minutes to try it out, or?
Should I give you guys a little, like 5 minutes to try it out, or? Shoot. Sure.
So I think in my example, the 3 questions I prompted for were, what is the dough made out of? What is the type of, does the product have sauce on it? I think were the 2 Boolean equations I used. And then for toppings, I just list, does it have pepperoni or not? Or does it have like triple cheese? And then the last one is just a Domino's one.
And then the last one is just a
so I'll give you guys.
So you're asking for specific toppings? Or?
You just test for a topping. You can even do it as simple as saying does have toppings if you want. But the idea is you're using that input function to get some variables.
Get some variables, and then you can test them.
And then at 11:20, I'll show you my answer.
And then at 11:20.
I'm having a little trouble opening up a new script. I'm right now I'm just using the lesson scripts. And just using it, but if I try to open up a new untitled one, get it to run.
Because it's not written. So this is a file system.
Okay.
So you have to write your code.
So it's
Control
a
S.
file system.
Okay.
So you have to
need
write
to save
your code. Control S.
Okay.
You need to save it.
Oh, you didn't have it. You would save it somewhere.
Or you didn't
Okay.
You would save it somewhere.
Okay.
Then save it something.
And save it something.
And then what you have to do.
So so these are just the questions. Right?
Control S.
Control S. So
Save it to your file system.
Questions. Control S.
And here you need to CD into this drive.
Go to CD.
And here you need to CD into this drive.
Go to CD.
Yeah, that works. Okay. You CD in and then Python in the file name. It should run.
Okay.
Because what it is a fully virtualized computer. So you that gives you practice navigating too.
Yeah.
So that gives you practice navigating too.
Yeah.
So are they asking a series of questions, or are you putting in a list of things that you want to make a pizza?
So what you do is just have a list of questions using an input function that you want the user to be prompted with, and then based on that input, you tell them if it's a pizza or not.
And then based on that input, you tell them if it's a pizza or not.
So you can do something like raw input,
So you could do something
parentheses,
like raw input.
does this product have topping?
Parentheses.
Does this product have dough?
Does this
product have sauce?
Does this
And
product
then
have dough?
on the left side, you'd have the variables, which I usually use the
On the left
is,
side, you'd have the
so
variables,
is
which I usually
underscore
use
like
is,
dough
so
as a
is
variable.
underscore like dough.
And the is just kind of like an indication if it's true or false.
And the is just kind of like an indication if it's true or false.
We're using like Refactoring, right?
That's because Ubuntu comes stock with
That's
two
that's
still.
because
Okay.
Ubuntu.
I didn't feel like going through the process of explaining how to install
I'm-
3 on
I didn't feel
Ubuntu.
like
On
going through the
Ubuntu.
process of
Yeah.
That's
explaining
too
how
much of a
to
hassle,
install
and I have to talk about
on
symlinks.
Ubuntu.
It seems like
binaries.
Block just doesn't exist in three.
Oh, they probably converted it.
Something.
I think they use
Oh,
I think they use input.
We use input.
Yeah.
They have
I
input.
think they use input.
Do man input, and it should tell you. They probably realized that that doesn't make sense, so they wanted more consistency. Made it an option. Okay, you guys feel pretty comfortable? I'm gonna go through the exercise real quick.
Comfortable? I'm gonna go through.
So with the exercise, what I do is I have a set of variables on the left
So
here,
with the exercise, what I do is I have a set of
and
variables
I
on the
do,
left here.
for example, raw input for the dough. So I say what type of dough is
And
it,
I do, for
and
example,
it
raw
will
input
assign
for the
some
dough.
string
So
I
what type of
provide
dough
to
is it?
dough. So
And it will
let's do that real
assign
quick.
some string I
I'll actually
provide
do the
to dough.
example.
So let's do that real quick.
So
I'll
print
actually do the example.
what is your order?
What is your order?
Maybe please describe it.
Maybe
And then
please describe
dough.
it.
And we'll do raw input,
And then
I'm
I'll
gonna
do
ask
dough.
what is the dough made of?
And we'll do raw input, and I'm gonna ask what is the dough made
The
of.
only answer is going to be bread if it's true or not. I'm going to ask if it has sauce. I'm assuming most pizza has sauce.
I'm gonna ask if it has sauce. I'm assuming
Does it
most
have
pizza has
sauce? And then I'm just going to put true or false here.
Does it have sauce? And then I'm
Give
just
some
gonna put
options.
true or false here. To give some
I'm
options.
going to do cheese.
I'm I'm gonna do cheese.
Does pizza have cheese? True or
Does
false?
pizza have
And that's going to
cheese?
prompt the user 3 times for
True or
3
false?
different inputs.
And that's gonna prompt the user.
And then this
3
is just
times
more
for 3 different
because
inputs.
I don't actually need to do
And then
this. I'm
this is
using
just
raw
more
input
because.
anyway.
I
And then I
don't
can
have
do
to
is pizza
raw input
as my
anyway.
test, and I'll
Then I
do
can do
dough
is pizza
equals
as my
bread.
test.
So only
And I'll
if
do
bread
dough
is used.
equals
Or
bread.
I could do
So
dough
only if bread is
equals
used.
bread. With capital
Or I
A.
can do dough.
Capital B if I want to be
equals
case
bread.
sensitive.
With capital A, capital
To
B
test
if
for
I want
either
to be
or
case
those
sensitive.
conditions, either it's dough capitalized
Test for
first
either
or
or
not,
those conditions, either
and
it's dough
it
capitalized
has
first or
the
not,
sauce has to be true,
and it has
and
the sauce has to be true,
the cheese variable has to be true,
and
hopefully
the cheese variable has to be true. And
I don't have a
hopefully-
syntax error. So I
don't
run
have
it.
a
Yep, no
syntax
syntax error. What is it made of?
So I run it. Yep.
What
no
is the dough
syntax
made
error.
of? Bread.
So what is
Does
it
it
made
have
of?
sauce? True.
What is the dough made of? Bread.
Does it have cheese?
Does it
True.
have sauce?
Now it's going to
True.
test it, and it's going
Does
to
it
look if
have
it's
cheese?
made of
True.
bread.
Now it's going to test it, and it's going to look if it's made of bread.
Someone had a C charger.
Someone had a C charger.
Sorry.
Is it an iPhone?
No, it's a Google.
Oh, Google
Is
phone.
it an iPhone?
Yeah.
No, it's a Google.
So
Oh, Google.
after that, you can see
Yeah.
that it tests all of our conditions. It
So
makes sure that
After that, you
either
can
is
see
bread
that
with
it
a
tests all of our
lowercase
conditions. It's
first
make sure
letter
that
or
it either is
uppercase,
bread with a
and it tests
lowercase,
if the user
first
uses
letter
both.
or uppercase,
Said it has and
and it
also
tests if
has
the user uses both.
cheese.
Said it has sauce and also has
On the second
cheese.
question, does it have sauce, true or false? If I just press enter without
And the second question, does it have
does it
sauce
take
true or false?
It-
If I
it-
just press enter
will-
without typing true or false,
I think it's
does it
none.
take the default
It will take it, but it will be empty.
empty
But
string?
I think it's none, actually.
So now because we're dealing with like and,
Yep.
is it possible like once we have like a test, once we have like
Yep.
false,
Possible like
then we
once
just
we
stop it and give it the result.
yes, once we
So,
have like false.
let's say is this made of dough?
Stop it
If
then.
we say no, we just stop there, so
Let's
test.
say is this made of dough?
Sure.
If we say
I
no,
mean, you just have to build the logic that way.
Okay.
So, like, let's say that you
I mean,
want
you
to
just
say
have
if
to build
it's
the logic
if
that
it's
way.
dough first, then return
So, like, let's
false.
say that you. wanna
So
say
that
if
subject that
if
where
it's
we
dough
test a
first,
bunch of
then return
conditions,
false.
and the first time it
So
shows
that
up ends up
subject
being
that
false.
where we test a bunch
We'll
of
cover in
conditions, and the
about
first
5
time it
slides.
shows up ends
Oh,
up being
okay.
false.
But I
Cover
do
in
think that Python has something
about
called
5
early
slides.
termination.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you have this big
But I do
long
think
string,
that
and I got to
Python
double
has
check
something
this
called
because
early
I'm not
termination.
sure if it's
So
a
if you
language
have this
feature.
big, long
But
string,
basically,
I gotta double check
it doesn't
this
actually
because I'm not
execute
sure
it
it's a
if it's an
language
or
feature.
statement the first
But
and
basically,
statement the first
it
time it
doesn't
sees a
actually
false. It
execute
just
it
doesn't
if it's an
execute
or
it.
statement.
Right, okay.
So I think it actually does that under the covers. But
if it's or, you have to do it.
So I think it actually.
Another
does that
one, once you
under
get the
the
one
covers.
yes, then you
But-
if it's or, you have
Yes.
to do it. If it's or, have a one yes.
Another one, once you get
Yeah.
the one yes. then
But
you-
again, like I'd have to
Yes.
go. I have to go Google that because I'm not sure
Okay.
if
But
they
again,
do
like I
have
have to go.
early.
I have to
It's
go
like
Google
early
that, 'cause I'm not
termination for that.
sure If they do have early,
Second one,
early termination.
and I'm just going to use pepperoni. What happens if we wanted
second
to, for
one-
example,
And
say
I'm
it
just
has
gonna use
toppings, right?
Pepperoni. What happens if
So we can
wanted to,
say,
for example,
Here
say
we
it has
expand our
toppings, right?
example.
So we can say
Has toppings.
Here we expand our
equals-
example.
We do
Has
input.
toppings equals.
Does your pizza have
We do
toppings?
input. Does your
Toppings is
pizza have
misspelled.
toppings?
So here we have is
Toppings
pizza.
is misspelled.
Print. Is it a
So here we
pizza?
have is pizza.
And then here we say, is it
Is
a
it
pizza
a
with
pizza?
toppings? So we can take, for example,
And
is
then
pizza
here we
has to
say
be
is
true.
it pizza with toppings.
and also
so we
has
take,
toppings.
For example, is pizza has to be true, and also has toppings.
And we can say that's pizza with toppings, right?
And we could say that's pizza.
And then we could just print
with toppings,
pizza with
right?
toppings, and we can say,
And then we could
Does
just
the
print
pizza
with toppings.
have
and we can
toppings?
Say, does the pizza
if we executed that real
have
quick,
toppings? And if we executed that real
we could do,
quick,
it's made of bread,
we could do
it has sauce, it
it's made of
has
bread.
cheese, It says it's a pizza.
It has sauce.
Does it have
has
toppings? I think I
cheese.
said true or
It says
false.
it's a
If I put
pizza.
true, it should just say true.
Does it have toppings?
And if I put
think
false,
I
it would
said
obviously
true or
say
false. If I
it's
put true,
not
it
a
should
pizza
just
with
say true.
toppings.
And if I put false,
And then
it
what
would
we could do is
obviously say
Domino's 2,
not a
and
pizza
if we
with
had,
toppings.
if we were testing for not
And then what
Domino's,
we
then
could
we
do
could
is
put an and
Domino's 2,
condition
and
and
if
say
we
and
were
is
testing
Domino's,
for
right?
not
And that would
Domino's,
be
then
the
we
only
put
addition
and
to this
condition
logic.
and say and is Domino's, right? And that would be.
And we can see that in the last example real quick. I put Domino's vendor,
We can see that in the last.
and I say, you
example
know,
real quick,
provide
that is
Domino's. If the vendor is not
vendor,
Domino's, then I say it's
and
true,
I
and
say,
it
you
just
know,
continues.
provide Domino's. If the vendor is not Domino's, then I say it's true, and it just continues.
So another thing I want to talk about, just since we were talking about testing conditions,
So another
is
thing I want to talk about. Just
there's this
since we were
concept
talking about
called
testing
truthiness. I don't know if you guys
is,
ever heard of truthiness.
There's this
So
concept called
truthiness is
truthiness.
the
I don't know
idea
if you guys ever heard
that
of
there's this
truthiness.
implicit
So
conversion
truthiness is
of
the
certain
idea
entities to true or
that
false.
There's this implicit
So,
conversion of
an
certain
integer,
entities to true or false.
999 will
an integer,
always have to use the
999
bool function.
will always
Be treated as if it was
have to
true.
use the bool function. Will
The
always be treated
0
as if it was true.
is always
The,
treated as if it
0
was false. A string
Is
that
always
is
treated as if
non-empty
it was false. A string
is treated
that
as
is
if it was
non-empty
true. An empty string
is treated as if it was true.
is always treated
An
as
empty string
false. Oops. Cool.
is always treated as false.
If you're doing testing
Bool.
and you're just going to use that in a
So if you're doing
situation
testing,
where a test has to be
and you're
conducted,
just going to use
if it has
that
like a
in
full string, it's going to always
situation where
return
a
true.
test has to be conducted.
And well, later on I
Full
can show
string,
you
it's
how
gonna
that can
always
kind of be
return true.
important.
And well, later on I can show
So that's
you
the
how
concept
that
of
can kind of be
truthiness, where if it's 0
So that's the
or
concept
empty
of
string,
truthiness,
it
where
automatically returns
if it's
false.
0
If it's
or
non-zero
empty string,
number
it
or a
automatically
string, and
returns
non-zero
false.
could be like a negative
If
number,
it's
or a string
non-zero
that's not
number
empty, then it
or
will
a string,
return true.
and non-zero could be like a negative number, or the string that's not empty, then it will return true.
So the next part we're going to talk about real quick is something called conditional code, and I'll blow up this
So the next part we're going to talk
presentation
about
a little
real quick
bit.
is something called
So
conditional code.
we're going
and
to
I'll
introduce
blow
a
up
new
this,
concept real quick.
presentation a
It's
little
called
bit.
an if statement.
So we're going to introduce
So in
a
this
new
case,
concept
I
real quick. It's
I have
called
a
an if
concept
statement.
called I love cats, a
So in
variable,
this
and I
case,
assign it 1.
I have
Now,
a
in
concept
previous
called I love
lectures,
cats, a variable,
any
and I assign
number
it 1.
is
Now,
considered
previous lectures,
a true value, correct?
any number is
So I love cats equals
considered
1.
a
Typically,
true
we can
value.
think of it as true.
So I love cats
We
equals
can
1.
conditionally
Typically, we
execute
can think
some
of it as
code based on a
Um,
comparison.
We can
So
conditionally
I'm gonna
execute
go up to
some
the lecture
code
board
based
really
on
quickly.
comparison.
So we
I'm
have this
gonna
if
go up to
statement,
the
which
lecture
is
board
a
really
keyword,
quickly.
which tells us that
So
we're going to
we have this
execute
if
some
statement, which is
conditional
a
code.
keyword, which
We
tells us
have
that
a
we're gonna
test condition.
execute some conditional
And like we
code.
said, we were doing all those
We
Boolean
have
type
a
conditions,
test
those
condition.
true or false statements,
And like we said,
we
we're
have
doing
some
those
kind of test
Boolean
condition
type
here,
conditions, those true
which
or
is
false
using the
statements.
if statement.
We have
And then
some
there's
kind of
this
test
colon
condition
on the
here,
far right.
which is using
And that
the if
colon
statement.
tells
And then there's
Python
this colon
that what
on the
follows is most
right.
likely
That
conditional
colon
code.
tells Python.
How do we know it's
that
conditional
what
code or
follows
code
is
that
most likely conditional code.
Yeah,
How do we know
conditional
it's
code.
conditional code or
There are
code
4
that-
spaces or tabs.
Yeah, conditional
So what
code.
happens in this
There are
logic
4
is I
spaces
have
or
I
tabs.
love cats equal to 1.
So what happens
We
in
test
this
if I love
logic
cats
is
is
I
equal to
have
1.
I love
This
cats
case is
equal
true,
to 1.
and because
Test
it's
if I
true,
love
this
cats
conditional
equal to
block
1.
is then
In this case,
executed.
it's true, and because it's true, this conditional block is then executed.
And part 2. So what happens if I love cats equals 0? If I love cats equals
Part two.
0,
So what
then
happens
that
if I
whole
love
section
cats
of
equals
conditional
0?
code just
If I
doesn't
love cats
execute at
equals
all.
0, then that whole section of conditional code just doesn't.
So what you end up having is a branch in the code. So, you know,
So
based
what you
on the
end up
value
having
of
is
I
a
love
branch
cats
in the
on the
code.
top left,
So
you could have one of
you know,
two
based
results.
on the
If
value
it's equal
of
to
I love
1,
cats on the top
then
left,
you have
could have one of
I
two
love
results.
cats, and
If it's
then
equal to
the code
1,
treats it as if it was
then you
printing the
have
conditional
I
code,
love cats,
followed
and
by
the
what's
code
beneath
treats
it.
it as if it was printing
And
the
if you put I love
conditional
cats
code,
equals
followed
0,
by what's
then,
beneath it.
you know, provide 0
And
there,
if you put
then
I love
it just
cats
ignores
equals
those
0,
lines of code.
then, you know.
So that's kind of like
there,
an
then
interesting
it just
little
ignores
concept,
those
right?
things.
It's got parallel universe.
So that's kind of like an interesting little concept.
So if
right?
you
It's got
don't
a parallel
indent
universe
those,
going on.
it'll print all of it, or?
If you don't indent it, what it will do, it will scream an error because it's
If you don't
expecting.
indent it,
It's
what
okay.
it will do.
But what happens is, let's say you only indent the first line and forget to indent the second
But
lines.
what happens is, let's
Only
say you
the stuff that's
indent
indented
the
is
first
conditional
line and forget to
Okay.
indent
to the
second lines.
is conditional
Only
code
the
or a
stuff that's
code block.
indented is
Yep.
conditional
Okay.
to the
Now, here on the
conditional
conditions,
code.
like when you say print, do you think I love
Now, here on
cats?
the condition.
This is not necessarily
Do
else.
you think I love?
No, there's no else.
Right, it's not necessarily else.
Yeah.
You could put something else.
No, there's
You just
no else.
continue. You just
Right, it's not
continue the
necessarily
stuff.
else.
Like,
Yeah.
You could put
There it
something
is.
else.
Yeah.
And just continue. You just continue the stuff, right?
when you do if,
Yeah.
and you say if love I love cat equal one.
When you do if, and you say
So you keep it this
love I
result.
love cat equal 1. So you keep
But
it-
you could ignore,
Um,
for example, in this case, where else, I mean,
Well,
if
you
it's
could
not,
ignore.
if it's different,
was that in
So
this case,
if-
One.
else?
just do something else.
It's different.
Yeah, you could do that,
So-
and we'll get into that.
Just do
So
something
the
else.
idea behind these things is
Yeah,
they're
you
kind of
could
like
do that.
casings.
And we'll get into
So
that.
like you have some
So the idea
condition,
behind these things is
then you
they're
can
kind of
execute
like
like that conditional
So,
code.
like,
But you can
have
actually,
some
in the next slide we'll show it,
then
but you can actually add multiple
conditional
conditions.
code. But you can
Right.
actually
And then there's like a
select
catch-all if all of
but you
them
can
don't
actually
work
add
and do
multiple
this.
conditions.
Yeah.
And then there's like
But in this case,
catch-all
that
if
print
all
statement
of them don't
below
work.
is just treated as if it was code that
But in this
executes
case,
right
that
after.
statement
Right,
below
not.
is just treated as
Yeah.
if it was code
Yeah.
that executes.
Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, we'll get into else real quick. Actually,
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
question. But yeah, we'll get into
we'll do
else
maybe we'll do like a really
Actually,
quick exercise first.
we'll
Maybe
do
we'll just
like
make
a
this really
quick,
simple, but
exercise
Can you
first.
do a variable
So
that
maybe we'll
tests
just
what
make this really
vendor? So
simple,
like a
but
raw input that
Can
tests
you
the
do
vendor.
a variable?
So,
that
like,
tests
did you go to
the
star
vendor?
market or
So,
not?
a raw input that
And
tests
then
the
based
vendor.
on that, write an
So like,
if
did you go to star
statement
market
that
or
says
not?
if you went
And
to
then
star
based on
markets,
that,
I'm buying
write an
chicken.
if
And then right
statement
underneath
that
it
says
say
if you
I'm buying
went to
peas.
star markets,
And we'll
I'm
just do
buying
one
chicken.
example.
And then right underneath it say I'm buying peas. And we'll just do one example.
And I think this one's pretty easy. You're just taking some raw input.
And I think
You
this
do
one's
like a
pretty
single if
easy.
statement.
You're
And then
just
based
taking
on that,
some
you
raw
just
input,
print,
you
I'm
do
buying
like a single
chicken.
if statement.
And if you don't say
And
it's
then
like
based
star
on that, you
market,
just
then you
print,
say
I'm buying
I'm just
chicken.
buying
And if
peas.
you don't say it's like star market, then you would say I'm just buying peas.
And we can do it till like 11:40 for this one.
And we can do it till like 11:40 for this one.
Is there an alternate syntax for string comparison?
No.
Is there an alternate syntax?
So it's overwritten operator, so you can do it's just equal.
Written
In Bash,
you
you definitely have two different operators for that,
in Bash, you
but not
definitely
in
have
Python.
two different operators for that.
Are you having?
But
No,
not in
I
Python.
got it. I just
Are you having?
think Java. No, I just remember think Java. Or is there?
There's class stuff in Java that's kind of interesting.
There's
Like they compare hashes of objects. So there's like more I don't know. They have more complex stuff. Python makes a lot of assumptions under the cover.
Python
It tries to be a little bit more intuitive so that you can do really quick prototyping, but that sometimes ends up actually biting it. Because if you have huge software systems, then those assumptions can sometimes mess parts of the system. Basically, it's dynamically typed, and a lot of the operators are overwritten.
Basically, it's dynamically typed.
For that
a lot
reason.
of the operators are overwritten for that reason.
And then if you guys got through the first exercise, the second exercise should
And
be
if you
pretty
guys
easy too.
got through the first exercise, the second exercise should be pretty easy too.
If you use brackets for the conditional code block, do you still have to do that? If you use
You shouldn't use brackets because the four spaces or the tab active the brackets. There is like some Python library that adds brackets, but it's more syntactical sugar than anything else. Most people there's a standard called PEP8, and you can look into it, but PEP8 they don't use any brackets for that.
And you can look into it, but PEP8.
It's actually kind of one of the more controversial things about Python is that it uses the four spaces for the tab. That's like
it's disconcerting to me.
no other like language does that. I think.
That's like no other.
But that said, I don't know. There might be other languages that have
That
do it separately.
That do it.
All right, so I'll give it one more minute, and then I'll go through the example code real quick.
All right, so I'll give it one more minute, and then I'll go through the example code real quick.
This is probably like about the halfway point in the class.
This is probably like about the halfway point in the class.
I have one question. How do you run this again? I mean, I understand pressing run keys, but
Control S first. You gotta save the file.
Control S first. You gotta save the file.
Okay, maybe you did save it. So I usually just use the command line and go to the file and then type Python, mark it, Mount Pi.
So just here.
Bring this up. Go to Bash. Then CD into the folder where you created market.
Then CD into the folder.
So CD class 3.
So class
Space.
class 3.
I think it's case sensitive, so
Oh.
I think it's case sensitive. So
enter Python and then space market.
Python.
And if you just do space capital M, then press tab, it should
just do
autocomplete.
space capital M.
And then enter.
Then press tab. It should autocomplete.
So this happens sometimes you have to either choose indents or four spaces.
So
You can't have either or.
You have to either choose indents or
Okay,
spaces.
so I had 4 spaces.
You can't have either or.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had 4 spaces.
And then the second one, you have to just double check. That's the controversial part is you can't mix and match. Now try
That's the controversial part is you can't mix it.
Control S.
Now try Control.
And then try writing. Then execute it again.
Okay, so then on.
Yep, wait, so
execute it again.
Oh, that didn't work.
Just do this. Go click here, then press the up arrow.
Oh, that didn't work.
Just do this. Go click here, then press the up arrow.
And let me
It
look
didn't
at
ask me for a prompt either.
here. Let me.
It didn't ask me for a prompt either.
You don't have an if statement.
Okay.
You have if
You don't
statement.
have an if statement.
Okay.
Mark it
If statement.
your test condition,
Mark it. Your
and
test
then the
condition.
colon.
Well, I was doing like true or false.
You have to do it that way.
Okay. Well, I was doing like.
And make sure. I'll go over the example so you guys can see it.
I was just trying to.
Small.
I'll go over the example so you guys can see it.
I was just trying to.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go over the example real quick so you guys can see it.
Okay, so I'll go over the example.
So
real quick
example
you guys
one,
can
the
see it.
grocery example.
So example one.
And then these
grocery
will be online. So if you guys want practice, I'd recommend like
these will be
go
online,
through the
so
exercise
if you want
practices and see if you
I'd
understand them.
recommend like.
So here we go real quick.
And see if you understand them.
Prompt for the
so here we
grocery
go
store.
real
So you
quick.
put the variable.
Prompt for the grocery store.
And we're going
so
to
you
use
put the
raw
variable-
input. What
And
grocery
we're going to use raw input.
store? What grocery store are you visiting?
Store.
That's going to create
What
that
grocery
prompt.
store are you
If
visiting?
grocery store
That's going to create
equals
that
star
prompt.
market,
If grocery store equals star market,
then you would print I'm
then
buying
you would
chicken.
print
No matter what
I'm
happens after this
buying
point,
chicken.
since this is not conditional code, I'm going to buy.
no matter
Type,
what happens
I am
after
buying
this point,
peas.
this is not conditional code. I'm going to buy.
That's always going
I
to
am
execute
buying
because it's
peas.
non-conditional. Then
That's always going to execute because it's non-conditional.
I'm not going to do that. That's the first problem.
Then-
Second problem is below.
I'm not going to do that. That's the first problem. The second problem.
So what grocery store am I
is below.
visiting? Star market.
So what grocery store?
I'm
am I
buying
visiting?
peas.
Star
I'm buying
market.
chicken. I am buying peas. And then if I save it
I'm buying
and I say I'm
peas,
going
I'm
stop
buying
and
chicken,
shop,
I am buying peas, and then
I'm
if
only
I
buying
save
peas.
it and I say I'm going stop
You guys see
and
it?
shop, I'm only
and then you
buying
can
peas.
test more complicated. The second
guys see
problem
it?
just shows you can
And
do
then
more
you can test
complicated
more
code. So if the
complicated-
grocery
second
store
problem just shows you
equals
you can
stop and
do
shop,
complicated
but
code,
only
so
on
if
a
the
Sunday,
grocery store equals
and day of
stop
week,
and shop, but only on a Sunday,
day of
and day
week
of week,
equals
day
raw
of
input
week equals
What day
raw input.
of the week is it?
What day
We can do day of week right
of the
here,
week is it?
and we say
Day of
Sunday,
week right here.
and only on Sunday if
we
I'm going
say
to Stop
Sunday.
and Shop, I'm going to buy ham because they have better ham at
And
Stop and
only on
Shop.
Sunday if I'm
I don't
going
know
to
if
Stop
that's
and Shop,
true,
I'm gonna
but
buy ham because
it's
they
just
have
more an
better ham at
example.
Stop and Shop.
So if you
I
click
don't know if
it,
that's true, but
I'm going to
it's just
stop
more an
and
example. So if you click it,
I'm buying
I'm going
peas.
to
What day
stop
of the
and
week is
shop.
it? I'm going to say it's Sunday. I'm buying ham.
I'm buying peas.
If I put
What
Monday,
day
it
of the
would
week
not
is
buy
it?
ham.
I'm gonna say it's Sunday.
You guys
I'm
see the
buying
logic
ham.
behind
If
that?
I put Monday, it would not buy
So you
ham.
can kind of test more
the
complicated
logic
logic
behind
that way.
So you can kind of test.
All right,
more
back to
complicated
the
logic
exercises.
that way.
So that should be exercise.
All right, back
exercise
to the
1,
exercises.
and it's
so that
also
should be
2 right
exercise-
underneath it.
Oops, exercise 1,
And let's just
and it's also
that was
2 right
confusing.
underneath it.
1 and 2.
And let's just, that was confusing. 1
So
and 2.
we tested for one and only one condition, but the thing is that's
So,
not always very
we
useful.
tested for
You don't
one and
always
only
just
one
have,
condition, but
you know,
the thing is,
you don't want
that's
to
not always very
test
useful.
one
You don't
condition
always just
one
have,
after another. You want
you
to
know,
sometimes test
you don't wanna
multiple
test
conditions.
one condition
So in our
one
example
after
here,
another. You wanna
we kind of have a
test multiple
classification
conditions.
problem. I
So in our
have
example
a
here,
store full of bikes,
kind of have a
unicycles, and
classification
tricycles.
problem.
I'm trying to
I have
ID if it's a
store full
unicycle,
of
a
bikes,
bicycle, or a
unicycles,
tricycle, or if it's
I'm
really
trying to
weird
ID
and it has
if it's a
20 wheels.
unicycle, a
I just
bicycle,
don't
a
know.
tricycle,
I really
or
don't
if
know
it's
what it
really
is.
weird and it has 20
So this
wheels,
shows you how
I
you
don't
can
know.
test
I really don't know what
multiple
it is.
conditions and then
So
choose
this
one
shows
of
you how
them
you
and
can
proceed.
Test
So,
multiple
like
conditions and then
previously,
choose
I'm
one
just
of
going to
them and
re-emphasize the
proceed.
structure.
So,
You
like
have
previously,
The first
I'm
condition
just
is
gonna
always
re-emphasize
emphasized
the
with an
structure.
if statement.
You have
you
the
test the
first condition is
condition,
always emphasized
and then
with
the
if
the
statement.
colon tells you what the
Test
next
the
lines are going to
condition,
be conditional.
And then the
You're going to use the
colon tells you
tab
the next
to
line
say
is
that
gonna
this
be
is a conditional code.
You're
So
gonna use
if the wheels are
tab
1,
to say that
print
this is a
unicycle.
conditional code. So
The elif
if
says
the wheels are 1,
if
print
the first
unicycle.
condition isn't met, test the
elif
next condition.
says
So
if
elif
the
says
first condition isn't
similar
met,
to an if
test the
statement,
next
test if
condition.
its wheels equals
So
2,
elif says,
and if it's true, then this conditional block gets executed and it prints bicycle.
and if it's true, then this.
And then you can
conditional
kind
block
of
is executed
deduce that the next one is just tricycle and it's just testing another
And then you
condition.
can kind of
And then
deduce
if
that
it
the
doesn't
next
have
is
one wheel, it
tricycle,
doesn't have
it's
2
testing
wheels,
another
and it doesn't have
condition.
3 wheels,
And then if
then
it doesn't
we're gonna
have one wheel,
have a
doesn't have
catch-all
two wheels,
which
doesn't have
says,
3
I really
wheels,
don't know.
then we're gonna.
So if I
just
put
have
999 wheels
catch-all.
there, it's going to say, I don't
I
know.
really don't know.
If I said the
So
wheels
if I put
are
999 wheels,
Chris,
it's gonna say
like
I
a
don't
string
know.
that's called Chris,
If I said
it's
the
going to be
wheels
like,
are
I don't know how many,
Chris,
you know,
like a
what is a
string
Chris
that's
wheel?
called
I have no clue what the
It's
heck
gonna
that
be
is.
like, I don't know.
So it will always
how
just
many-
flag it as, I don't
What
know.
is a
That's
Chris
kind of
wheel?
more of a catch-all. If all the
So
other
it will always
conditions
just flag it
fail,
as, I don't know.
that
That's
last
kind of
else
more of a
condition gets
catch-all.
executed.
If all the other conditions fail, that last else.
And how does that
condition
look
gets
like
executed.
specifically? We can kind of visualize how it works. On the left
How does
side, you
that look
have
like
your variable, which
specifically?
is
We
2
can kind of
wheels.
visualize how it works.
And then you'll have
On the left
conditions,
side,
and it will
you have
test
your
it from
variable,
top
which
to
is
bottom.
2
So the
wheels.
first condition is
And
1
then
wheel.
you'll have
It
conditions,
doesn't have
and it
one
will
wheel,
test
it's
it
not a
from top to
unicycle.
bottom. So
The second
first
condition
is one
is
wheel.
it has
It
2
doesn't
wheels.
have one
That's
wheel, it's
true.
not a
So then we
unicycle.
we
The
print out
second
bicycle.
condition is it has 2 wheels. That's true. So then we print out bicycle.
What happens if we tested the same condition twice, or a condition
What happens
which
if we tested
the
the
where
same
a
condition
previous
twice,
condition
or a condition which
So
where a previous
if you
condition
looked at
is
this
also
really
true for some
quickly,
subcondition.
in this case, I'm testing the
So,
same condition. So
If
we
you
have
looked at
wheels
this
equal
really
2,
quickly,
we print out
in this case,
bicycle,
I'm testing the
right
same
underneath
condition.
it we have
So
wheels
we have
equals
wheels
2,
equal 2,
and it prints out
print out
motor.
bicycle. Right underneath it,
When
we have
you
wheels
think about
equal
this, you're
2,
thinking there's one of
and it
two
prints
things
out
that could
motor
potentially
bike.
happen here. Either it prints
When
just
you
bicycle,
think about this, you're thinking there's
or it
one
prints
of two things
bicycle
that
and
could
motor
potentially
bikes.
happen here.
and
Either
how
it
the
prints
if,
just
elif,
bicycle,
and else
or it
condition
prints
works is the
bicycle and motor
first
bikes.
condition
And
that's
how the
true
if, elif,
is
and
executed.
else
Everything
condition
else is
works is the first condition that's true is executed. Everything else is true.
Now that's a little different from other language. In other languages, you have this concept called a
Now
switch
that's a
condition,
little different from other
and that will
languages.
actually
In
continuously
other
go down
languages,
the
you have
entire
this
thing or a
concept called
case.
switch condition,
And you literally
that
have to
will
say,
actually continuously
break
go
out
down
of this
the
condition
entire
if
thing
it's
for a
met,
case.
to force
And
it
you
to
literally
stop
have to
execution.
say,
Python's a
break
little
out of this
different.
condition
The
if
elif
it's
condition,
met,
the first time
to
it
force
meets
it
it,
to stop
just
execution.
continues.
Python's a little different.
And then just
The
to
elif
visualize
condition,
this
the
really
first time it
quickly,
meets
on
it,
the left side you have the 2 wheel situation, but
And then
this
just to
time the
visualize this
test
really
condition,
quickly,
there's
on the
2
left
cases
side,
with
you
2
have the
wheels.
2-wheel
Only the
situation.
first one
This time,
actually
the
gets
test
executed.
condition, there's
So
2
the poor
cases
motor
with 2
bike
wheels.
never gets
Only the
touched
first
ever.
one actually gets executed.
It might as well be
So
code
the
that
poor
doesn't
motor
exist.
bike never gets touched ever. It might as well be code.
What about that else clause? Well, like I said previously, if all other conditions aren't met, that's
What about
when else
that
gets
else
executed.
clause? Well, like I said previously, if all other conditions.
And a good
aren't
example
met,
of this
else
is,
gets
you have
executed.
the first condition, the second condition, the third
And a good
condition. If you
example
have
of this
5
is,
wheels,
you
it's going
have
to go to that
the
else
first condition, the
and,
second condition,
it's a
the
question
third
mark. I
condition.
don't
If
really
you
know
have
what
5
it is.
wheels, it's going to go to that else condition.
What happens if you don't
It's
provide
question
an else
mark. I don't
condition?
really know what it is.
So you just do if, elif,
What
and
happens
there's
if you
no
don't
else
provide
condition
an
at
else
all.
condition?
So in that
you
case,
just
it
do
will go
if,
through every
elif,
single
and
one,
there's no
and if it
else
fails
condition.
everything, it just ignores
So in
everything.
that case,
That
it
code
will
might
go
as
through
well
every
have not
single
existed.
one.
There are no
If it
catch-all
fails everything,
situations.
it just ignores everything. That code might as well have not existed. There are no catch-all situations.
So just a real quick exercise again, in case you're interested. I
So
was
just a
at
real
Acadia
quick,
National
exercise
Park
again.
last weekend.
In case you're
So one of the
interested, I
things
was
we
at
use,
Acadia National
we usually
Park,
do is we ask
last
ourselves, like, what's
weekend.
an easy, hard, medium,
So
or
one of the
hard
things
trail?
we
So
usually do is we ask
let's do like a
ourselves, what's an
really,
easy,
I made a more
hard
hard
trail?
example.
So,
Like my solution's a little
let's do
harder,
like
but
a
we could do a
really-
simple example.
I made a more
Based
hard
on the
example.
length in
Like,
miles
my
or
solution's a little
kilometers,
harder, but we could do a simple
tell me
example.
if it's an easy,
Based
medium,
on the
or hard
length anything miles
We'll
or
do that.
kilometers, tell me if it's an easy, medium.
So
or
you could say some, if you want to make
We'll
it more
do that.
explicit, if it's under 2 miles, call it an
if
easy
you want to
trail.
make it more explicit.
If it's
under
less
2 miles,
than
call it an easy trail.
6 miles,
If
we
it's
could call it a medium trail.
Less
If it's
than
greater than 6 miles, we're going to call it a hard
6
trail.
miles, we could call it a medium trail. If it's greater than 6 miles, we're going to call it a hard trail.
In this case, yes. You could technically do 2 as
This
well.
case, yes.
No, then use the last one.
You could technically. Do
So you could do if, elif, and elif, but have all 3 conditions
So
be
And no, and so you don't do the
and
else.
elif
Yeah.
have all
So like if you did
be-
like if less than 2, easy.
So like if you do
elif,
like if
um,
less than 2,
less than 5,
easy.
medium.
Elif
Elif
less than
greater
5,
or equal to 5.
medium.
Hard.
Elif,
So that last condition you can do either or.
You write else or else. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But
so that
honestly,
condition
usually in
you
those
can do
cases
either
I use
or.
else just because
Right.
it's
Yeah.
simpler. Yeah.
But honestly, usually in those cases, I
So it's also just easier. You're not sitting there like
yeah.
staring at all the conditions and
Right.
trying to
But it's also
logically
just
think
easier.
it through. You're
You're
just
not
like,
sitting
oh,
there
if
like
nothing works, then
You're
catch
trying
on.
all the conditions and
Yeah.
trying to logically think it through. You're just like, oh, if nothing works.
Is there any
then
difference
catch on.
between the single and double quotes? Or
Single quotes usually are used when there's double quotes in the string.
Double
Quotes are usually used when there's single quotes in the string, and triple quotes are used when you have both single and double
And
quotes.
triple quotes are used when we.
So there's 3 different ways to have strings. I typically use, yeah, I usually do double quotes.
Okay.
I typically use. Yeah, I usually do double.
You could also technically escape things too, but I just feel like that's
You could
too much
also
escape.
technically escape things
You have
too.
to do that in other languages.
But I just feel like that's.
Oh, it's the amount of times I have to escape them. The worst thing to escape is have to escape postmark
The
statements.
amount of times I have to escape.
'Cause it's
the
dollar
worst
sign,
thing to escape is have to escape.
Like / then something.
dollar sign.
And I realized
Like
a long time ago I looked at it and I was like, oh, there's an easy way
And
to not
realized
deal with this.
a
So
long
in
time
Postgres,
ago
if
I
you use
looked at
double
it,
equal
like,
signs,
oh, there's an easy way
it's
to
the same as
not deal
Python's
with this.
triple
So
equal
Postgres,
signs,
if you
and you
use
don't have that
equal
problem.
signs,
So like
it's the
randomly
same
in
as
my
Python's
code,
triple
I'll have
equal
like
signs,
double
and
equal
you don't have
signs.
that problem.
But the problem is I
So, like,
found
randomly
out
in
that
my
the
code,
compiler
I'll
doesn't
have
know,
double equal
has to
signs,
now make,
but the problem
has to
is I
compile the
found
first
out
part of
that
the code,
compiler doesn't
and the
know
second part of the code has to make logical sense of what that middle part is. So
And the
like
second
doubles
part of the
compile
code
time.
has
So
to make logical sense of what that middle part is.
so I don't know if
like,
it's worth.
doubles compile
I don't know.
time.
It
So-
makes makes things kind of
So
more
I don't know if
complicated.
it's
I
worth-
think.
I don't know. It makes makes things.
So I'll do that till 12. Well, I'll let the exercise go till
So I'll do
about
that till
12.
12. Well, I'll let the exercise go till about 12.
And then a lot of this stuff might be a little more advanced. And if you're not used to it,
And then
that's
a lot of
fine.
this stuff
The
might
next
be a
class
little
is going
more
to be more
advanced.
hands-on for that
If you're
reason.
not used to this,
So we'll have like a
that's
set
fine.
of
The
like
next class is
applications
gonna
and
be
you
more
guys
hands-on for that
can sit
reason.
down and work
So
on
we'll
it.
have like a set
And
of,
then
like,
try to get
applications, and then you
to
guys
building
can-
these
can
applications,
sit
and that'll
down
give
and
you a lot
work
more
on it,
practice.
And then try to get to
How would
these
I'm reading
applications,
in
and that'll give you a
the
lot
raw
more
input
practice.
and it's stored as a string, as a string initially. How do I cast
the raw input?
So it should be int. So int with parentheses. Yeah.
So it should be
Um,
INT.
If you're interested in
So
casting in
INT
general,
with
lesson
parentheses.
1 has a section just on
If you're
casting.
interested in casting in general, lesson 1 has a section just on casting.
Do you want people out where to find previous lessons?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've got the
You got previous lessons? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
doing the
Yeah,
previous
I've
exercise.
You got previous
I was
lessons?
doing
Yeah.
I didn't,
input
so
of
I
instead of
was
raw.
doing the previous exercise.
So how do you do for the
I was
string?
doing the
So,
input of instead of raw input.
so let's say you have raw input and you want to cast it to an integer. You can
So
use
let's say you have
int.
raw
Yeah,
input
for the string.
and you want to
like,
cast it to.
Oh, if you want to convert to a
you
string,
use INT.
it's
Yeah,
str.
for the string.
Yeah.
Like,
So if
Yes,
you want to
no.
convert to a string.
Lowercase str. Yeah. So if you guys are interested in casting, if you go to chriskottmeyer.com, there's a class section, and it has all of the lectures. You go to lesson
chriskottmeyer.com, there's
There-
a class section.
Yeah, I can show it to them.
Lectures, and if you go to lesson,
Assuming my server hasn't crashed
yeah, I can show it to
because
them.
of the spam bot who's been attacking me
Assuming
recently.
my server hasn't crashed because of the spam bot who's been.
So this is
attacking me
my blog. There's the classes, health
recently.
innovators
this is
class,
my blog.
and then this is a
Classes,
summary of this
Health Innovators
class.
class.
All the presentations are right here.
And then this is a summary of this class.
The Git
All the
repository is
presentations are
right
right
here. So if you're looking for the lectures, they're all right there.
Repository is right here. So
This is a current lecture is
If you're
here. If
looking
you
for
wanted
the
to know
lectures,
more
they're all
about
right
casting,
there.
it'd be lesson 1.
this is a current
And then
lecture
if you
here.
want to just look at the
know more about
code
casting,
and
it'd
you're
be
not
lesson
interested
1.
in more of the
And
kind of
then if you
presentation
wanna just
layout,
look
you
at
just
the
want to look at code,
and you're not
you can
interested
click
in
on
understanding
GitHub
more of the
Innovators
kind of
class.
presentation layout, you just want to
All the
look at
code's
code.
present
You
here.
can click on GitHub Innovators class.
And if
all
you
the
find
code's
yourself
present
like stumbling on it, like good practice is go to this
And if you
GitHub
find
page
yourself,
and
like,
do all the lessons,
stumbling
and
on
that will
it,
get
like,
make
good
you
practice
more
is go to
comfortable.
this GitHub page
And then
do all the
to give some
lessons
credit to
and
Adele,
make you more comfortable.
oops, I think it's
And
2.
then,
So
to give
Adele
some
is the
credit to
TA
Adele,
for the course.
oops, I
She
think
works
it's 2. So Adele
kind of more
is
in
the TA
finance
for
and
the course.
simulation.
She
She produces these
kind of
beautiful
more in
practice
finance and
problems.
simulation.
So you can
She produces
try out these practice
beautiful
problems.
practice problems. So you can try out these practice.
And what's cool about her problems is that here are the problems on the actual web page, and then if you want to know the solution, you click here.
Here are the problems on the actual web page.
And she actually,
if you want to know the solution,
I have to
you click here.
approve her
And
code
she actually
into the
I have to
repository, but she
approve
has
the
exercises for this
her
class.
code into
So if
the
you want to try
repository,
her
but she has
exercises,
exercises
her
for this class.
exercises are a little more advanced
So
than
if you
my
want to try her
exercises.
exercises,
So I'd recommend,
her exercises
start
are
out
more advanced
with
than my
going through the class exercises,
So I'd
and once you're
recommend,
comfortable with it, try some of
start
hers
out
out
with
because she brings
going
in
through
more
the class
interesting stuff.
exercises, and once you're comfortable
So
with it,
her
try some of hers
class
out,
1
because she brings in more
exercises
interesting
use
stuff.
the input function.
So
that's why I ended
class
up trying
one
it out on this
exercises
class.
use the input function.
I think
So that's why I
her
ended
class,
up trying it out.
Also make sure everyone signs up for Slack before they leave.
I think her
yeah,
class-
that's true.
And also make sure
Yeah, I'll
everyone
show them
signs up
Slack
for
too.
Slack before they leave.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll show them Slack too.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so all those are available. Before the next class, I'd recommend going
Yeah,
through the
so all those are
exercises for
available,
class 3
Before the next
and
class,
just
I'd
understanding
recommend
them
going through
because the
exercises
applications
for
are going to be
class 3
extensively based on
and
class
just
3
understanding
material.
them because the
So I
applications
generally
are
take class 3
extensively
material
based
and then
on
I
class 3
throw a
material.
loop. So I might
So
do something
I
like,
generally take
I
class
think
3
one of
material
the
and then I
applications
throw
will
a
be
loop.
building
So I
a
might do something
chatbot
like,
with
I think
regex,
one of the applications
which is,
will be
regex is like a
uh,
mini language
chatbot
that lets you
with
do
regex.
really cool stuff.
Which is,
So regex
is
lets
like
you
a
do
mini
stuff like you
language that
can
lets
search
you
a
do
string
cool
for a
stuff.
single word and it will always
So
show up.
regex
If it
lets
shows
you do
up, it
stuff
does
like you
something.
can search a string
Or
for a
you
single
can
word
say,
and it will
you can
always
build a
show up.
regex
If
just
it
for
shows
phone
up, it does
numbers.
something.
And if it finds
Or
a
you
phone
can
number,
say
you
you
can
build a
respond to
regex
stuff.
just for phone
Now I'm not
numbers.
going to show the
And
regex
if
for
it
phone
finds a
numbers
phone
because it's
number,
about
you can
the
respond to stuff.
good one is
Now, I'm
about
not going
this
to show
long.
the regex for phone numbers because
It's about like
it's
100
the-
characters. And the
good
international
one is about this
one
long.
is probably about
about
400
like 100
characters.
characters. And the international one is
So I'm not
probably
gonna
about
get that
400
deep into it, but
characters.
we'll do some we can do some interesting things like
So
if
I'm
you
not gonna
see
get
help
that
help
deep
twice in
into
a
it, but
row,
some, we can do some
you know,
interesting things. Like
have a certain
if
reaction if you see an
help
exclamation
twice in a
mark,
row, you know,
or so
have a certain
or
reaction if you see an
five if you see
exclamation
5
mark.
exclamation marks, then
or so
you know,
or
then respond
if you see
this way.
5 exclamation marks,
You have
then,
very interesting responses,
you know,
basically.
then respond this way. You have very interesting responses, basically.
All right, so I'm going to go really quickly through my answer. My answer is going to be a little more
All
complicated,
right, so I'm going to go
probably than most,
really quickly through my answer. My
because
answer
I
is
used
gonna be a
all
little
of these
more
different
complicated,
ones.
probably than most.
But it kind of gives you a sense of like
'cause I
what
used all of
a
these
potential
different ones.
solution looks like.
But it kind of gives you a sense of.
So
like,
let's
what
really
a
quickly look
potential
at
solution
the
looks like.
hiking solution. So
let's
hiking
really
solution,
quickly
we're going to
look at
test for
the hiking
a few
solution.
different conditions. The first
So
one will
hiking
be
solution, we're gonna test for,
what trail do you
a
want to
few different
choose,
conditions. The first one will be, what trail
and then
do you
we're
want
going
to
to give
choose.
you some criteria, right? So print
And then we're
criteria.
gonna give you some criteria, right?
So we'll do
print
elevation
criteria
equals, we'll take the raw input of elevation and
So
just
we'll
say
do
elevation in
elevation.
feet.
equals, we'll take the raw input of elevation and just say elevation.
Then we're going to
in
do
feet.
length of the trail. So raw input,
Then we're gonna do length of the trail,
and
so
we'll do
raw
kilometers.
input,
We could do
length,
miles.
and we'll do kilometers,
Fitness. So how fit are
Do
you?
miles.
If you're not fit, I'm gonna
Fitness.
say don't do
So how
anything
fit
but
are
the
you?
easy trail. If you're fit,
If
then
you're
we
not
can
fit,
think about
I'm
harder
gonna say don't
medium
do
trails.
anything but the easy
Then
trail.
is it
If you're
raining?
fit, then we can think about
And if it's
harder
raining, I'm gonna
medium
downgrade
trails.
all the medium trails
And
to
then is
easy
it raining?
trails. Is it
And
raining?
if it's raining, I'm gonna downgrade all the medium trails to easy trails. Is it raining?
And then you can we do some type conversions, so we don't want the elevation in
And then you
feet
could do,
as a
we do
string.
some type conversions,
We would like to
so
do
we don't
comparisons
want
as an integer.
the elevation in feet
For the
as a
length,
string.
same
We
issue.
would like to do comparisons
So
as
do
an
some
integer.
very basic type
For the
conversions.
length, same issue.
And then,
So do some very basic type conversions. And then
yeah, so I might take some medium trails and say don't do the medium one. Do
yeah,
the
so
easy.
I might
Oh, I
take
thought
some
you said
medium
you
trails
wanted
and
medium
say don't do the medium one.
You
do the
downgrade it
easy
to like,
Oh, I thought you said you-
yeah.
That's okay.
Well, it makes sense, right? Like,
What you said.
if it's raining, take the medium trails and say it's easy.
That makes sense. Right?
You know, unless I'm really in
If
the mood
it's
for a
raining,
hard
take
trail.
the medium
In
trails.
which case, I don't care if it's raining or not. I'm
You know,
just gonna
unless
go
I'm
for it.
really in the mood for a hard
I'm not saying
trail.
this is true,
In
like
which
true.
case, I
I
don't care.
probably
Right.
wouldn't do like a super hard trail, but like
I'm not
you
saying
know,
this
people
is
have
like
their
true,
their
I probably
criteria
wouldn't
on
do
how
like
they
a super hard
evaluate it.
trail. But,
Just to
like,
mix
you know,
things
still
up a
have
little
their
bit, I'm gonna test the
criteria on
Boolean,
how they
the more
evaluate it.
complicated Boolean
Just to
conditions
mix
first.
things up a little bit,
Create
I'm
a
gonna
true
test the
statement and then
Boolean,
substitute
the more
it in.
complicated Boolean conditions.
So for is
Create a
easy,
true statement and then
I'm gonna say
substitute
the
it.
elevation is less or
So
equal to
for is
200,
easy,
and the length is
I'm gonna say
less
the
than 5
elevation is
kilometers.
less or equal to 200,
And
the
if it's
length
less
is
or equal to
less
1
than
kilometer,
5
I'm just really not gonna
kilometers.
care. It's probably an easy trail
And if
anyway,
it's
right?
less or
Like if I'm
equal
going
to 1
500
kilometer,
feet,
I'm
I don't
just
care if
really
it's
not
like
gonna
up
care.
a
It's
few
probably an
a
easy
few
trail
rocks.
anyway, right?
It's
if I'm
fine.
going 500 feet, I don't care if it's
For the medium trail,
rocks.
I will say the elevation
For
is
the medium
between
trail, I will
200
say
feet
the
and
elevation is between
500
200
feet.
feet and
And we'll say that the length is at least
500 feet.
1 kilometer.
And we'll say that the length is at least.
And then first thing is, if I'm not fit at all, I'm just not ever
And
going
then
to recommend
first thing is, if I'm not fit
any
at
trail
all,
other than the easy one.
I'm just not ever going to recommend any trail other than the easy one.
So that's gonna be overriding condition. Like if I'm not fit,
So that's going to
There's
be
always
the
gonna be
overriding
easy trail.
condition. Like, if I'm not fit, I just
yeah.
always
So
do the easy.
and I've previously defined as
That's
easy
what you define.
up here. So that's either gonna
Yeah,
be
so,
true or false
and
based on
I
what
previously
input I
defined
gave.
as easy.
So I could just put
Up
is
here,
easy
so that's
here,
either gonna
and
be
it's
true or
a
false
true or
based
false
on
statement,
what
so it
input
should
I
just
gave.
work.
So I could just put
And I'm
is
just gonna do
easy
trail
here, and it's a true or
equals
false
easy.
statement, so it should just work.
Later on,
And I'm just going to
do
do
an
trail
easier way to do this,
equals
but
easy.
for right now, this is
And later on, I'll show
based on the
you
class
an easier
material,
way to
this
do
is the
this.
best
but
way of doing
for
it.
right now, this
So let's say it is easy and it
based
is
on the
raining.
class material. This is the best way of doing it. So
Then I'm
let's say it is
gonna
easy
downgrade
and
it
is
to an
raining.
easy trail, right? So that's an overriding
I'm gonna
condition. So
downgrade it to an
if it's
easy
a
trail,
medium
right?
trail, but it's
So
raining,
that's an overriding condition. So
but it's
if
raining,
it's a
then
medium
I'm
trail,
gonna say,
but
you
it's
know,
raining.
Don't do the easy trail.
But it's
But if it
raining,
isn't raining,
I'm
then we'll
gonna say,
continue with the
you know,
medium trail.
Don't do the easy trail. But if it isn't raining, then we'll continue with the medium trail.
And then I'm going to do last elif condition is medium. And remember,
then I'm
if
gonna
the
do
previous
last elif
condition
is medium.
is met, then we'll skip
And
it.
remember, if the
But if
previous
it's not
condition
raining, then it will
is,
just continue.
is
It will
met,
be a
then we'll
medium
skip
trail.
it. But if it's not raining, then it will just continue. It will be a medium trail.
No, the last one is the catch-all. If it's anything other than that, we'll just call it a
And
hard
then the
trail.
last one is we'll do the catch-all. If it's anything other than that, we'll just call it a hard
Give
trail.
me a second. I'm just going to type this out real quick.
Give me a second. I'm
And
just
then
gonna
we'll
type
just do
this
that.
out
Okay.
real quick.
And then the last part's just some like
And we'll
printing
just do that.
statements.
Okay.
Yep.
So if fitness.
And then the last part's just some like printing
Yep.
statements.
So somehow the elif should be related to that first case, right? Your if.
Yep.
So the way to think about it is no matter what happens, if I type
So the way to
false
think
in the
about it is
fitness
no matter
question,
what happens,
it's always
if
going to
I
recommend me
type,
easy.
false
If I
in
am
the fitness
fit,
question,
then it gives
it's
me more
always going to
options.
recommend me easy. If
That's
I
what
am
the first
fit,
statement does.
then it gives me
Right, so then
more
it helps.
That's what the first statement does.
So maybe we
Right,
put
so
that
then
in
it helps.
because it's my first class. Right?
Yeah.
Because then I see the elif then has inside it's talking about like easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy.
Elif then has inside.
So the best way of explaining it
Yeah.
is You have elevation,
the
length,
best way of
fitness,
explaining
and
it
range are the
is,
things we get from these.
you have elevation,
Right.
length.
Then we just do conversions because we don't want to compare a string to an integer.
We just do conversions because
Is
we don't
easy,
want it
we
to
define
compare
if
a
it's less
string
than
to an
200 and the length is great is less than 5.
I get that, okay.
Yeah, you guys get that?
And the length is great.
And then the medium is if it's between 200 and 500 and less than greater than or equal to 1. So these are just conditions we test here. And based on true or false statements, we determine if it's easier or medium.
And based on true or false statements.
And then we can have a set of conditions. So the first condition is if we are fit. If we aren't fit, we're always going to pick easy and just skip everything else. If we're actually fit, so we put true on that question, then it skips to the next one,
If we're actually
which just says, looks at this value and sees if it was an easy trail or not. If it is an easy trail, then it just types it as easy. Then for the medium case, this is just to show how you can override, like, is medium. So if it's medium and it's reading, then we're going to just say it's an easy trail.
So if it's medium and it's
And then, you know, this condition, if it's false, and this is false, then we can say, if it's medium, then it implies that these two conditions are true. So we'd have a medium trail.
Then it
No,
implies that these two conditions
just
are
hard
true.
trail. That's
So
what
we
we're
have
saying.
a
It's not
medium trail,
trail,
and then the last one is like just hard trail. Because we're saying if it's not an easy trail,
Conversion
it's not a
can be on
medium
the
trail,
same
it's a hard trail.
Like you have elevation equals
The
int of
conversion can be on the same
So-
variable. Like
Can
in
it be on the same variable?
int of
What do you mean?
elevation.
Like
So
elevation equals integer of
can it be on the same variable?
the same variable.
Like elevation equals integer of elevation.
You can use it twice.
Same
Yeah.
variable name.
It's
like
it can
elevation.
override any number of
You can
times.
use it twice.
Or
Yeah.
It's
So
it
in this
can
specific
override
case,
any
the
number of
elevation
times or
takes the
just-
raw input.
So in this
Then the next
specific
level,
case,
we
the
reassign the
elevation,
number,
takes
not the
raw
string,
input.
to elevation.
Then the next
And then we
level,
just use that
reassign
elevation in
the
testing.
number, not the
So you can
string
use
to
elevation as a
And then we
variable
just
as
use
many
that
times as you
elevation
want
in
for
testing.
testing purposes.
So you
And
can
you
use
can convert
elevation
any-
as a variable as many times as you want for
Yeah,
testing.
yeah. So
And you can
in the
convert
last
into
class, we
program.
talked about how variables
Yeah,
work
yeah.
in terms
So
of memory.
in the last
So
class,
it actually
we talked
explains
about
how
variables
when you
work
assign
in
it, it
terms of
overwrites it.
memory.
It treats it like a
It
label.
actually explains how when you assign it, it overwrites it. It treats it like a label.
Do you guys feel comfy with the example? If not, what I recommend
You guys
is
feel
if you want to get some practice, is
If not,
write
what I
it
recommend
piece by piece and then
is if
execute
if
it.
you wanna get some
So do a few
practice,
lines, see how
write
it works.
piece
Do
by
a few
piece
lines,
and
see how it
execute
works.
it.
Print out
So do a
some
few
stuff.
lines, see how
Print
it
is
works.
great for testing the
Do a few
program.
lines, see how it
So you
works.
might want to print out
some-
is
some
easy
stuff.
to see
Print
what's
is
actually
great for
happening.
testing the program. So you might want to print out is easy to see what's actually happening.
Okay. So next one we're going to talk about, we're going to go a little more complex now.
Next one we're going to talk
So
about.
we talked about,
We're going to go a little more complex now. So we talked about.
yep,
Okay, so
We have done
that's-
two things.
after you test the
Like
fitness.
else,
Yep.
and then under that else, then we test for the trail type.
And then under
Yep.
that else, then.
so like you test for fitness.
Fitness.
If it succeeds, it just executes.
So like you
If the fitness condition fails, then it goes to the next condition.
Right, so that next one, because we test for the fitness being false.
Then it goes
Yep.
to the next condition.
Right, so that
We
is.
could have said
we test for
else.
the fitness being false.
And then
Right.
start another
We
if
could have said.
Yeah.
else.
based on the trail type.
And
Yeah,
then.
So that's why I was
start
kind of
another
confused,
if.
because we can
Yeah.
merge, we can merge the two.
So that's why.
So the way to think about it is if
Yeah.
is, you know, like if something then execute it. Elif is short for else if.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but okay.
So it's like if, else, then if.
If.
Exactly.
Do something else, then
So it's
if.
like if,
No, that's-
else, then if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually
Do
that
something
part of the
else, then
topic,
if.
Right.
you're,
No, that's-
you're always one lesson ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Of the topic.
No, but actually, we're actually
You're always
talking
one
about
lesson
that
ahead.
right
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So like
Okay.
what you
No,
know
but
about
actually,
like how you
we're
can
actually
mess
talking about that right.
Right, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
okay,
So that's exactly
what
what's
you meant about
happening in
like
this
how you can
example.
have nested conditions. Right?
So in this example
So
here,
that's
we're
exactly
going to
what's
use
happening
something
in this
called like
example.
more like a compounded version of
in
it.
this example
So like
here, we're gonna
typically
use
if you have an
something called,
else
like,
if statement,
like a compounded
you
version of
execute
it.
some
So,
conditional
like,
code,
typically if you have an
but
else
you can actually have
statement,
conditional code
you
within
execute
conditional
some
code.
conditional code.
So like you could have
Like, you
this
can actually
if
have
statement
conditional code
testing if
within
it's
conditional
wheels.
code.
Then you
So,
can
like,
add
you
test
could have
another
this
conditional code
statement
block here.
testing if it's
So in this
wheels.
case, if the wheels are
Then you
2,
can test
then
another
we're going to
conditional
test
code
if it's an
block here.
enclosed space or
So in
not.
this
In
case,
this
if it's
example,
2,
we're going to test 4
then we're going to
conditions.
test if it's
We're going to
enclosed
check if
space
it's
or not. In
a
this
car,
example, we're
pod,
going to test 4
a
conditions.
car that's
We're going
convertible,
to check if it's
a motorcycle,
car
which
that's a coupe
you know is a
model,
standard motorcycle,
a car
or an
that's
enclosed
convertible,
motorcycle.
a motorcycle.
So in this
which,
case, you
you
do
know, is a
if the
standard
wheels are
motorcycle
2, it's
or
obviously a
enclosed
motorcycle. If it's enclosed,
So
if
in
it's
this
not
case,
enclosed,
you
we
do
say
if the wheels
you know
are 2,
print
it's obviously
motorcycle.
a motorcycle.
If it is
If it's
enclosed,
if it's not enclosed,
if it's
say, you know,
if it
print
is enclosed,
motorcycle.
then we'll
If
use
it
a
is
lit motorcycle.
enclosed, if it is enclosed, then we'll use a lit motor spike.
That's called a
Why
bug.
there is no-
Just noticed that.
This is a bug. Yes, the colon.
Just noticed that.
Like
This is a bug. Yes,
throw
the
an error.
colon.
Like,
Good
this is a
point. Yes,
bug.
the compiler.
Yes,
would,
this
like,
is-
throw, like
this
the
is
interpreter would throw an error and be like, "This is improper code."
So I
Yes, this
tested
is-
all of this
this is
code
me
out in the
finger fudging and
repository,
forgetting to
but
switch the image.
maybe occasionally
So I
didn't
tested
copy-paste
all
the
of this
image.
code out in the
So
repository.
that's what happened.
But
Good catch
maybe
though.
occasionally I didn't copy-paste the
So
image.
you test the first condition, it's the motorcycle
Good
condition.
catch though.
The elif is the wheels.
So
If the
you
wheels
test
are
the
4,
first condition, it's
and we
the
do the same
motorcycle
like
condition.
if it's
The
enclosed,
elif
say it's a
is the
coupe
wheels.
car,
If
else
the wheels are
print its
4,
convertible
then we do the
code.
same, like,
And then if it meets none of these
it's a
conditions,
coupe
if it
car,
doesn't have
else
2 4
print
wheels,
its
then we just say it's
convertible
not a
code.
car.
And then if it meets
Or a
none of these
motorcycle.
conditions, if it doesn't have 2 4 wheels,
Previous
then we just say it's not a car.
I was doing the miles in numbers. Yeah, and
Previous example,
I was doing
I was
like
doing
trying
the
the
miles
string
in
as input,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and,
like
I was
just
doing
some
like
text,
trying with
and
the
it
string.
always ends up in the
Yeah,
else
like
condition.
uh,
It is not going elif condition,
and
not
it
going.
always ends up in
where
the
I'm
else
saying
condition.
type
It
it
is
up.
not
So
going
if you
to
just do
elif
raw
condition, not
input
going to
and you
else,
grab it,
where
it's
I'm
a
saying
string.
Right.
If it's a string
So if you just
and
do
it
raw
compares it
input
to a number,
and you
Yeah.
grab
it's
it,
always
it's a
going to be
string.
else because a
If
string
it's
is
a
never
string, and it
anything
compares it
relative
to
to
a
a
number,
number.
it's always going to be
Yes,
else,
I
'cause a
did
string is never
both
anything
converting
relative
to an
a number.
integer and
Yes, I
still it
did,
goes to my elif
both
condition, not to else.
converting to an integer
Huh.
and still it
Can you
goes
show
to
me
my
real quick?
elif condition, not to the else condition.
I'll,
Huh.
I can't answer it
Can you show
in
me
a
real
minute
quick?
or so. Then just grab me
I'll
after
look real quick.
the
And
class.
I
and I'll
can't
explain.
answer it like in a minute or so. Then just grab me after the class and I'll
I'll
explain.
just see it real quick. If that
I was trying this
I'll
one.
just see it real quick.
It always ends up, even though I type in
That-
text.
I was trying this one first, and it always ends up in, even though I type in text, it ends up here like
L equals. Got it. Less than 2.
try real quick just to execute it real quick.
Try it real quick just to execute it real quick. Man, it's taking long.
So that makes sense because that's not a number. Try 1.
So that makes sense because that's not a number.
That's going to be
Try 1.
and then
That's gonna
uncomment
be
that.
Yeah. And then uncomment that.
And then just do 1.
Control. Yep.
Yeah, it works.
Like
And
if
then
I
just do 1. Yeah, it works.
like if I do here, if I do text.
Yeah, and that happens because text can't be converted into an integer.
Yeah.
That's
and
why.
That happens.
All right,
because
so do you
text
guys
can't be
get that
converted into an
that
integer.
part pretty easily?
That's why.
And then I'm just going to do an example
All right,
of what
so
it
do
looks
you
under
guys
the
get
cover. So you
That
test
part
your first
pretty
condition.
easily, and then I'm just going to do an
It either has
example
1
of
or
what looks
4
under the cover.
wheels as
So
a
you
branch,
test your
and then you
first
test your
condition,
second condition
It either has
afterwards,
1
and then
or
you finally get to
4
that code
wheels
branch.
as a branch,
And that's
then
kind
you
of what's
test your
happening
second
under the
condition
cover.
afterwards, and then you finally get to
So
that
you'll do your first
That's
condition,
kind of
first
what's
condition,
happening
wheels
under
equals
the
2,
cover.
only one wheels
So
equals
you'll do
4.
First condition, wheels
It's
equals
supposed to be
2.
wheels equal 4.
Only one
And then on wheels equals 4, it tests the enclosed
It's supposed to
condition,
be
it's
wheels
false,
equals
then
4.
it goes straight to
And then
the
on wheels
convertible.
equals 4, it tests the enclosed condition, it's false, then it goes straight
And the
to
thing
the
about like
convertible.
this like nested condition, if you have too many nested conditions, you can
And
almost
the thing
always
about
convert
like
it
this like
into
nested condition,
like
if
a
you have too
condition
many
with an
nested
and
conditions,
clause.
you can almost
So
always
like
convert it into
I find compounded
like
or
a
nested
condition
if
with
conditions
an
are
and
kind of
clause.
confusing.
So like
So if you get too many
I find
ifs, you can always
compounded
convert
or
it into like
nested
more
if
complex
conditions are kind of
statements.
confusing.
So in this
If you
case,
get
the
too many
logic
ifs,
is
you can always
exactly the
convert it
same.
into
All I
more
did is I
complex
took the
statements.
if statements
So in
that
this
were
case, the
nested
logic is
and I
exactly
brought them
the
into
same. All I
the
did is I
first
took
condition.
the
So
if
now it
statements
tests
that
if
were
it's wheels
nested,
equals 2
and I
and
brought them
enclosed.
into the
Prints
first
motorcycle,
condition. So now
elif
it can
wheels
test if
equals
it's
2
wheels
and
equals 2
is
and
enclosed and lit bike.
Prints motorcycle,
Wheels equal 4
elif
and
wheels
enclosed, we
equals
call
2
it a
and is
convertible
enclosed
car,
and
and then
lit
if it's
bike.
not
Wheels
enclosed,
equal
if it is
4
enclosed,
and
we call it a
enclosed, we
cube.
call it a convertible car, and then
And
if
that's
it's
how that condition
not
looks like, and you can
enclosed,
see
if it
the
is
results
enclosed,
are
we
the
call it a
same.
cube.
You have the same 4 code
And
blocks that
that's
get
how that
executed,
condition looks
but
like.
what
You
we're
can see
doing is
the
combining
results
the
are
actual
same. You have the
conditions.
same 4 code blocks that get
So
executed.
if you find
But
yourself
what we're
doing
doing
like
is combining the
5
actual
if statements,
conditions.
you should really think about potentially
So if you find
collapsing it
yourself doing
into
like
like
5 if
more
statements,
complex
you should really
condition
think about
statements.
potentially collapsing
And
it
the way to think
into
about it
like
is like if you get really
more
hairy
complex
code,
condition statements.
there's this concept called
And the
refactoring,
way
and
to
what
think about it is like
refactoring
if you
is
get
you
really
take something
hairy
that's very
code,
hairy and
there's this
complicated
concept
and
called
hard to read,
refactoring, and what
and you make it
refactoring
easier to
is you
read.
take something that's very hairy and complicated and hard to read.
And then I honestly think the whole wheels thing is confusing. So
And then
one
I
last thing we
honestly
could have
think
done
the
to make
whole
this
wheels
code more
thing
readable
is
is instead of
confusing.
testing for how many
So
wheels the
one
vehicle
last thing
has,
we could
we
have
just
done
tell
to
what
make this
vehicle
code more
type it is.
readable is
So if
instead
the
of
vehicle
testing
type
for
is
how
a
many
car,
wheels
then you
vehicle
test the
has,
car
we just
conditions.
tell what vehicle type
If
it
the
is.
vehicle type
So if
is
the vehicle type is a car, then you test the car
motorcycle
conditions.
conditions.
If the vehicle type
So picking
is
good
a
variable
motorcycle,
names and
you
knowing when
test the motorcycle
to
conditions.
change the name is
So
can be
picking
very
good
useful. It just
variable
makes your
names
code a
and
lot
knowing
more
when
readable.
to change
And just
the
as an
names
example,
can be very
in
useful.
condition
Just makes
1,
your
instead
code
of
a lot
looking
more
for how many
readable.
wheels it has,
And just
what
as
we
an
end up doing is
example,
just saying
in
what car
condition
type
one,
it is.
instead
And
of
this
looking for
is,
how many
in my
wheels it
opinion, a
has,
lot easier to
what we end up
understand,
doing
right?
is just saying what
If it's a
car type it is.
motorcycle
This
without a
is,
hood,
in my opinion,
with
a
a
lot
hood.
easier to understand, right?
Okay, if the hood's
If
a
it's a motorcycle
convertible
without a
car,
hood,
so it's supposed to be
with a
hoodless,
hood.
then
Okay, if the hood's a convertible.
okay, so
car,
logic
so
might
it's
be a
supposed to be
little
hoodless.
off, but the
Then,
idea is like
It's not the car.
Okay, so logic
Yeah.
might be a little off, but the idea is like,
It's not the car.
yeah.
so another exercise. This one is a haunted house exercise.
So, another
this will go
exercise.
till
This one is a haunted
1225.
house exercise.
And basically,
this will
you're
go
just going to
till
test 2 conditions.
1225.
You're going to look at the number of ghosts in a
And
haunted house and the
basically,
number of
you're just gonna
windows.
test 2
The first
conditions.
time you
You're
write the
gonna look at
logic,
the
I
number
want
of
you to
ghosts
use
in
a
haunted
nested
house
if
and the number
to
of
test
windows.
if you should
First
enter
time
the
you write
haunted
the
house.
logic, I want you to use a nested if
Then I want you to
statement
rewrite
test
that
if you
as
should
a
enter the
set
haunted
of
house.
as a condition statement with and.
Then I want you to
involved.
rewrite that as a set
And then can you think of
as
any
a
other ways to
condition
improve your
statement
code?
with and involved. And then can you think of any other ways to improve?
So in my example, if I said if it has 100 windows,
so in my example,
then you should always be willing to go into a house.
Said if it has
if it's got less than 100
then you should
windows,
always be
then
willing
if
to
there's
go
more
into
than
the
one
house.
ghost, I'm
If
not
it's
going
got
into the
less
house.
than 100
If there's no
windows,
ghosts, then I go
then
into the
if there's
house.
more than one ghost, I'm
That's
not going
that's
into
my
the house.
example.
If
So
there's no ghosts, then
if
I'm
first,
going into the house.
if 100 windows go into the
That's
house,
my
else
example. So
test how many ghosts
if
are in the
first,
house.
if 100 windows go
And
into the
then
house,
my
else
example B, I
test
actually
how
show
many ghosts are
a
in
quick
the house.
shortcut.
And then my example B, I actually show a quick shortcut.
And I believe after this slide, the only thing that happens after this slide is we go through while loops real quick. And then I'll show you, there's a cool example where instead of an if condition, we show how we can take a factory line and convert it to 3 different factory lines, which is kind of cool.
Factory line and convert it into 3
That's in while loops we can do really interesting stuff.
And while loop, we can do really interesting stuff.
Are we allowed to use or?
So the trick is using whatever you feel comfortable using.
So the trick is you can use whatever.
Yeah, you can use and or not.
So far we're using hands.
If you want to use not, you can use
Yeah,
not
you can use
too.
and or not.
The idea is just like
If you want
to get used to like complex,
The
like
idea is just
multiple level code,
to get used
and
to
then how do you convert
like
that to
complex,
a single
like,
level again?
multiple level code. And
That's
then
probably
how you
something I do
convert
at
that
work
to
a lot. If I
single
see
level
really
code.
complicated multi-nested things, I
That's
usually
probably
break it
something
down
I do
into
at
something
work a lot.
easier.
If I see really
'Cause to me,
multi-nested things, I usually
I think
break
the
it down
craziest
into
code I
something
usually
easier.
see, not at
Because
my
to me,
job
the-
right now, but the craziest, sometimes the craziest code I've seen is like 5 levels
Not
deep.
at my job right now.
And they
but
have
the
an if
craziest-
condition
sometimes
that's
the craziest
4,000
code I've
lines
seen is
long
like
and
5
something else
levels
behind
deep.
it.
And they have an if condition.
So you
that's
occasionally see stuff
4,000
like that.
lines long and something else behind it. So you occasionally see stuff like that.
Is it more than one ghost or 0 ghosts?
Just depending on you. I think my example, if I saw more than one ghost, then
Just
I didn't
depend
go
on
in.
you. I think my example, if I saw more than one ghost, then I.
So as
didn't go
opposed to
in.
Windows, it's really just, is there a ghost or not?
Well, if there's 100 windows and there's a ghost, I still go in.
Okay.
I can even have
Oh,
a million
if there's
ghosts.
100 windows and
If there's
a ghost,
100 windows, I don't care. Basically, if it's
I
like
can even have a million ghosts.
what are those
If there's 100
garden,
windows, I don't care.
those
Basically, if it's
little
like
garden
what are
sheds
those,
called the
garden-
windows? If there were like a
those
billion
little
ghosts in there, I
garden,
would still go in.
Sheds.
Okay.
called
But
windows, if there were like
if it had
billion
99
ghosts in there,
windows, I wouldn't go in.
Okay.
If there was a
But-
single ghost. This is
Yeah,
basically a
99
description of
windows,
somebody
I would
who
go in.
is scared of the dark.
So it's basically
But
a description
if
of
it is
somebody
dark and he
who
sees
is
ghosts, then he
scared of the
freaks out.
dark.
That's basically the kind of conceptually how to think.
If it is dark and he sees ghosts, then he freaks out. That's basically the kind of conceptually how to think of it.
2 windows. Oh, 100 windows, go to home. Ghost, go to home. Else.
Oh,
don't
100
go to-
windows, go to home.
I gotta think about this real quick.
Else, don't go to home.
Oh, go to house.
This real quick. Oh, go to house.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually easier than the way I did it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
That's actually
That's
easier
correct.
than the way I did it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so last minute, and then I'll go through the example.
Okay, so last minute, and then I'll go through the example.
All right, so I gotta go
All right,
set up the
so-
code window real quick, and
I gotta go set up the code
the exercise for the ghost.
and
Print. Do
the
I go
exercise
into
for
the house?
ghost. Print. Do I go?
First,
into
I
the
prompt for
house?
how many ghosts there are.
First, I prompt for how many ghosts there are.
Then I do how many windows.
Then I do how many windows.
And then in my case, I do enter equals false. That's just
And then
as a
in my
placeholder. I'm
case,
just
I
going
do
to assume
enter
I'm not
equals
going to go
false.
into it. So if the Windows
placeholder, I'm just going to assume
equals
I'm not going to go
100,
into it.
I'm going to
So if
enter
the
it.
Windows equals 100,
If the
I'm
Windows
going to enter it.
less than 100, and the Windows
is less than 100,
and the windows are greater or equal to 10.
and
If
the
there's a
windows
single
are
ghost,
greater or equal to 10,
I did different logic, and I'm going to say
single
true.
ghost, I did different logic.
Print,
Then I'm going to say
will
true.
you enter the house?
Print, will you
And enter.
enter the house?
So this logic is a little bit different. Basically, what I do say is if there's
this logic
100
is a little
windows,
bit
then I'm going to
different.
go enter. So
basically, what I do,
I
is
I
if
start
there's
this whole
100
logic
windows,
by
then I'm gonna go enter.
prompting for
So
ghosts and windows.
I
Then
start this
I'm just
whole
going to make the
logic
assumption I'm
by,
not entering this
prompting
house.
for ghosts and
I don't know
windows.
why it looks crazy,
I'm just gonna make the
scary
assumption I'm
looking
not
house.
entering
I
this
don't
house.
feel like going into
I don't
it.
know why it looks
So then I
crazy,
test the condition to see if I really want to
scary
enter
looking
it.
house,
So
I don't
first thing I
want to
say
go
is if it has 100
So then I
windows,
test the condition to see if I really want to enter it. So first thing I say is if it has 100
let's just do
windows,
greater than. Yeah, let's do greater than. It makes no sense. So it has
just do
greater or
greater
equal
than.
to 100 windows.
Yeah,
we'll
let's do
say
greater
we
than.
enter.
It makes no sense. So it has
If it has
greater
less than
or equal
100
to
windows,
we'll
but
say we enter.
greater or equal to 10, if
it
I
has less
see
than
it, if there's
100
no
windows,
ghosts, I
but
still enter.
More
If
greater
there's
or
a single
equal to
ghost,
10,
I don't.
if
And I
see
don't
it,
need an
if
else
there's no
statement
ghosts,
here
I still
because I made
If
the
there's a
assumption
single
that I'm
ghost,
not
I don't.
entering it.
And
So that's
I don't
kind
need
of an
else
interesting
statement
little
here
loophole.
because
So
made
I
the
assume I'm not
assumption
going to
I'm
enter into it.
So that's
Then
kind
I
of an
test two
interesting
conditions
loophole.
to see if I really want
So
to
I
enter it,
assume
if
I'm
it
not
has
gonna
more than
enter into
100
it.
windows,
Then I
or if it
test
has
two
between
conditions
10 and
to see if I
100
really
windows
wanna enter it. If it
and
has
zero
more than 100
ghosts.
windows,
All
or
other
if it has
conditions are
between
always
10
going to be
and
false.
100 windows and zero ghosts.
Quick question.
Yep.
All other conditions are always going to be false.
If.
Quick question.
Give me a second.
Uh,
On the elif,
give me a second.
And we deal with and.
Yep.
Now, because we already know that we have less.
And we deal with and. Now, because we already know that we have less than 100.
so this one tests if there's more than 100 windows.
Yeah, more than equal, yes. And then the L if that follows.
So this one checks
Yeah,
if
so
there's
that
more
says if it's less than 100 but more than 10.
Yes, and then the L if
But we already have less than 100.
Yeah, so that
we
says
need
if
two.
it's less than 100 but more than 10.
Yeah,
we already have less than 100.
So what?
So it's already true that we have less than 100.
yeah. I added an extra condition. That's all.
So
So like,
No, okay, fine. I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
saying
yeah.
you could
I just
go
added
without
an extra condition.
putting less than 100.
So, like,
okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we just put like more than 10.
Covering the L if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think in this logic, I would just did something
Yeah.
like if it's 100, if it's 100
so I think in
over
this
100
logic, I
windows,
would
then
just
you should enter.
did something like
If it's between 10 and 100
if it's
windows
100
and there's no
over
ghosts,
100
still
windows,
enter it.
then you should
If there's
enter.
less than
If it's
10
between 10
windows,
and 100
it would
windows,
still be
and
false.
there's no ghosts, still enter.
That's the idea
If there's
behind this
less
one.
than 10 windows, it would still
I think
be
I just
false.
did a little different
That's the
example.
idea behind this one.
But do you guys see the
I think
example?
I just did a little different example.
And then
Do you guys see the
need to run
example?
it real quick. So
And then
10 ghosts.
Run it real quick.
We'll do 5 windows.
So, 10
Why isn't it working?
ghosts. We'll do 5 windows.
Hmm.
Why isn't it working?
Do you see that? That conditional code. See
Ah,
that's
do you see
neat.
that? That conditional code.
So boom,
See that's
boom,
neat.
run it. 10 ghosts.
So
100, 10 windows.
boom, run it.
You'll enter
10
the house.
Ghosts, 10 windows. You'll
Why do you enter the house? Oh, I know why. I forgot to convert
Why do you
them.
enter the house? Oh, I know why. I forgot to convert them.
Because I'm using raw input at the top. Now if I do 10 ghosts, 10
I'm
windows,
using raw
it will
input
be
at the
false.
top. Now if I do 10 ghosts, 10 windows, it will be false.
And then if I wanted to convert this to make it easier to read, I could do
Then
if
I
the
wanted to convert
windows
this to
is
make it
greater
easier
than
to
100,
read, I could do
enter true.
if the windows is greater than 100.
If the windows is less than
enter
100,
true.
greater, and windows is greater
If the
equal,
windows is
to
less than
110,
100 and greater, and windows is greater
and
than
the ghosts
equal
equals 0,
to 110,
Then enter equals true.
and the ghost equals
Else,
0,
we're just going to say enter equals false.
then enter equals true. Else.
And then
we're
if
just
we
gonna
did
say
that
enter equals
logic,
false.
it would be equivalent to the top, because all we're doing is taking this condition.
And then if we did that
And
logic,
we're moving
it
it
would be
here.
equivalent to the top.
Right.
Because all we're doing is taking this condition.
That's the only difference we're
And
doing.
we're moving it here. Right?
If we remove
That's the only difference we're doing.
exactly that line where you are,
If we
no,
remove,
you are, no, not that line. Yeah.
exactly
Yep.
that
Yes.
line where you are.
If you remove this first one,
You are.
I think we'll get the same.
No.
Yeah.
If you remove this
Right,
first
because
one,
if you have
you'll
the
get the same.
You won't.
if you have Windows
Right,
greater
because if you have the-
equal to 1.
No, you won't.
Because if
So once you do it else if
greater
that is
or
already a
equal to
given.
100.
that Windows is
So
less
once
than
you do
1.
Yeah, it's a given that's less than 100.
Right, so that means
That
if
Windows
we
is
even
less
if you
than
remove that, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
gonna
a
change
given
it.
that's less than
It's
100.
already given.
So that means if we even
So it will
it's not
it
gonna
will
change
change
it.
the result.
It's already given.
It will change the result.
So
Yeah,
it will,
so
it will change the result.
it will change the result because
It will
let's say
change
that
the
there's
result.
100 windows,
Yeah, so
but you have a
it will
million
change the
ghosts.
result because let's
That
say
would
that
be
there's
true.
100
No, I'm not
windows,
saying that to remove, maybe
but
I'm
you
just
have
not
a
expressing
million
myself
ghosts.
well.
Yeah.
What I was
That
saying
would
was
be
that
true.
if,
No, I'm not saying that to remove. Maybe I'm just not expressing myself well.
yeah,
What
Yeah.
I was saying
Yep.
was that
you just
if
get rid of this portion. So you just get just get
Yep.
window
get rid of this portion.
more or equal to 10.
So you just get rid of
Yes,
just
you can
get
do that.
Because this is already given
more or equal to
that
10.
Windows is less than.
Yes,
Yes,
you
yes,
can
you
do
can
that.
do that.
This is already
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the only reason I didn't do it that
Yes,
way
yes, you can
is
do that.
because
Oh yeah.
just because it's
So the
easy
only
if you
reason
look at
I
it.
didn't do
right,
it
to
that
me,
way
it makes
is
more sense.
because,
Yeah, I mean you could do this
if you
too.
look at it.
Just for me,
it
that's
makes
just
more
easier to
sense.
read. That's all.
Yeah, I mean you could do this too.
That's probably
I-
the easiest.
Just for me,
to
that's
read.
just easier to read.
If it's
That's all.
greater or equal to 100, if it's between these
That's
two
probably
numbers,
the
but
easiest for me
you're
to
totally
read.
right.
If
You
it's
could do like greater or equal to
100,
10.
it's between these two numbers.
It's
but
just
you're
more of a
totally
matter
right.
of
You could do
like
greater or equal to
it
10.
just depends if it's
just
intuitively
more of
makes
a
sense.
matter of,
Yeah.
like
Sometimes it's just more readability. Like if this makes more sense to you,
No, that was
Yeah.
it exactly. That was
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
sometimes it's
if
just
this
more
makes more
readability. Like if this
intuitive
makes more
sense
sense
to you, then I would say
No,
do it
that
that
was
way.
exactly. That was
Yeah.
exactly.
If
For
this
me,
makes
that's
more
just
intuitive
I think
sense to
I
you,
think
then
in
I would
terms
say
of
do it
bands,
that
I
way.
think.
For me, that's
Yeah.
just
I see.
I
Okay,
think
fine.
in
So,
terms of bands, I
Okay.
think.
I see.
But yeah, but you're 100% right.
So
I do agree with what you're saying.
But yeah, but you're 100%
So
right.
really
I
quickly
do
we'll
agree
go.
with what you're saying.
We're almost pretty much
so
set.
Really
Let's talk a
quickly,
little bit
we'll
about
go
repetitive code. Now I'm not going to
almost,
type this on the screen
pretty much
because
set.
by definition
Let's
this
talk a
is
little bit
super
about
repetitive.
repetitive code now. I'm
But
not
you
gonna
are
type
an
this on
owner
the
of a
screen
Mustang
because
factory,
by definition,
or
this is
pick your
super
favorite
repetitive.
car.
But you are an owner of a Mustang.
And you basically have a VIN number or a serial number, so you have vehicle 1,
Civic.
vehicle 2, vehicle
And
3,
you
and
basically
nothing
have
else
a
changes.
VIN number or a serial number.
Right? The model doesn't change. When you have a factory, it's just continuously always the same thing. Now, if I was sitting there and I had 1,000 factories, 1,000 cars I had to print out, if you didn't know how to code properly, you would just write big long blocks of code like that.
If you didn't know how to code properly, you would just write big long
And we
blocks of
talked
code
about,
like that.
we talked a little bit about
And we talked about
how we have conditional code. Well, what
we talked
about
a little bit about
what about the situation where you want
how we have
it to
conditional
execute
code.
multiple times as long as the condition is true?
What
And
about
that's
the
exactly
situation
kind of
where
what
you
while
want
loop
it to
does.
execute multiple times as long
So
as the
what a
condition
while
is true.
does,
That's
I'll
exactly
explain it real
kind of
quick.
what while
You know,
loop
you have a
does.
starting number, so
So
vehicle
what a while
ID
loop
equals 1.
does, and I'll
You set
explain
up
real
your
quick, is you have a
constants.
starting
So like
number,
the
so
make,
vehicle
model,
ID equals 1.
wheels or
You
seats.
set up your
The way you write the
constants,
report
so, like,
doesn't
the
even
make, the
change.
model doesn't change. the
So all you have to
seats,
do is really you take the
way you
vehicle
write the
ID,
report doesn't even change.
you think about the
all
maximum
you have to
number
do
of
is
cars you want to
really-
deal with,
you take
and
the
then
vehicle
you just
ID,
increment the vehicle
you
ID
think about the maximum number of
until
cars you want to
you
deal
have
with,
more than
and
50
then
cars.
you just increment
And then
the
you'll
vehicle
stop
ID
printing it. So
until
the way to think
you
about
have
it
more than 50 cars.
is
And then
you
you'll
start
stop
with your
printing
vehicle
it.
ID
So
equals 1,
the way to
you
think
have
about
your
it
max number of cars,
is you start
you
with
set up your
vehicle ID equals
system,
1,
so
you have your max number of
your make,
cars.
your model, wheels,
You
seats,
set up your
and then this
system,
is just
so
plugging in
when
these
you have
numbers
your
into
make,
a
your
string.
model, your wheels, your seats.
And then all we have to
This
do
is
is
just
we can
plugging
take the
in
vehicle
these
number,
numbers
which is
into
1,
the string.
it's going to be less than 50,
And then all
so
we
it's
have
going
to
to
do is
execute
take
this
the vehicle
code,
number, which
it's
is
just
1,
going
it's
to
going to be
print
less
the
than
report,
50,
input
so
the
it's going
vehicle
to
ID,
execute this code,
and then we're just going to go to the
it's
next
gonna
vehicle ID.
print the report and
And since 2 is less or equal to
It's gonna go to the
50,
next vehicle ID.
it's just going to keep executing.
And since 2 is
One
lesser
time,
equal
sooner or
to
later,
50.
we're going to get to 51.
It's just going to keep executing.
Once it's 51, it's going to be
One time,
vehicle
sooner or
number is
later,
51
we're gonna get to 51.
is not less or equal to the
Once
number
it's
of cars.
51, it's going to be
When that
vehicle
happens,
number
just like an if
51
statement, it's going
is not
to
less
exit
or
out
equal
of
to
the
the number
loop,
of
skip
cars.
it, and just print
When
it.
that happens, just like an if statement, it's going to exit out of this loop and skip it and just print factory cooldown.
Inside the while print report percentage of
Inside the while.
So for the report segment, all we're doing is the %s is just substituting some value.
segment,
So the second
all we're
line
doing
where it
is
says
the
make
%s
model,
is just
you're
substituting
substituting
some
make
value
into the
So
%
the second
first
line where it
and
says
model
make
into the
model,
next
you're
%s.
substituting
For the
into
second,
%s
third line of the
first,
report,
model
we're just
into the next
substituting wheels and
%s.
seats.
For the
And that first
second-
line where you see
third line
no
of the report, we're
substitution, we
substituting wheels and
substitute it
seats. And that first
on the
line
s-
where you
in the
see
while
no
loop itself.
substitution, we substitute.
Because what ends up happening is you have this long string and it has
on the while
1%
loop
s in it, and you're just going to take the
Because
vehicle
what ends up
ID,
happening is
since
you have
it's
this
the only
long
thing
string
that's
and
not
it has
filled, and it's going to
1%
fill it
s
in.
in it, and you're just going to take the vehicle
Do you guys
ID,
want to see this in
the
action?
only thing that's not filled, and it's going to fill it in.
So I'm going to,
Do you guys want to see this in
I'll
action?
write it real quick so you guys can see what a while loop looks like
So
in
I'm
action.
gonna.
So you're going to do,
I'll write it
I'm
real
just
quick
use
so
the
you guys can see what a while loop looks like. in
MID is
action.
max ID,
So you're
make
gonna
equals
do,
4.
I'm just gonna do
This is just
VID.
model
MID
equals
is
Mustang.
max ID. Make equals Ford.
Wheels
Just
equals
model
4,
equals Mustang.
seats equal 2.
Wheels
You're gonna have the report.
equals 4, seats equal
You know,
2.
technically you don't even need
You're
this
gonna have
line.
the report.
So you could, yeah, you do actually need the
You know,
line.
technically you don't even need
So then you
this
could do
line.
report plus equal is
You
just
could- yeah, you do
appending.
actually need the line.
We take the number,
Then you could do
we
report
put in a
plus
substitution
equal is just
parameter.
appending. We take
We
the
do
number,
here, we do make,
put in a
%s,
substitution parameter.
model,
We do here, we do make.
%s. You could imagine this being
%s,
on like some car documentation,
model,
right?
%s. You could imagine this
So
being
we'll
on
have
like
make,
some car documentation.
model.
So
We're gonna add
make,
this to the line.
model.
Wheels,
We're gonna add this
seats.
to the line. Wheels,
We're gonna do wheels,
seats.
seats,
We're gonna do wheels,
and then here's the while loop.
seats,
We start with vehicle ID 1.
and then
we go
here's
to
the while
50.
loop.
So while
We
the
start with
vehicle
vehicle
ID
ID
is
1,
less or equal
we
to
go to
50,
50.
to the MID,
So while the vehicle ID
We're gonna
is
go
lesser or equal
print.
to 50, to the
we're going to
MID,
take that report and we're going to just
we're gonna
substitute the
go
vehicle,
print.
the vehicle
We're
ID.
gonna take that report and we're gonna just
And then we're going to take the vehicle ID,
the vehicle ID,
the VID,
and then
We're
we're
just
gonna
gonna
take
add
the
one
vehicle
to it.
ID, the VID, and we're just
and
gonna add one
after
to
all
it.
that looping, we're going to just print it. We're just going to cool down the factory.
And then after all that looping, we're gonna just print it. We're just gonna.
And then
cool
you
down
see on the
factory.
right, this is the loop. There's 50 different models, and you can see the
And
serial.
then you see on the right, this is the loop.
So we have number 1,
There's
number
50
2,
different models,
number
and you can
3,
see the
nothing else
serials
is
are counting,
changing,
right?
and we get all the way
So
to
we have
50 and it should
number
exit.
2, number 3, nothing else is changing.
Pretty
And we
nifty,
get all the way to 50
pretty
and it
easy,
should
I think.
exit.
So you can think of it as like, it's like an if condition,
Pretty nifty.
except you just keep
pretty easy, I
reevaluating
think.
that first
So
condition
you
over
can
and
think
over
of it
again.
as like, it's like an if condition. Except
What
you just
happens
keep
if you comment
reevaluating
out
that first
this
condition
here?
over and over again?
What happens if we never update the ID?
What happens if we
Well, that
comment out
means
this here?
this is never going to
What happens
exit.
if
It's
we
just
never
always going to go
update the
1,
ID?
1, 1,
Well,
1,
that
1,
means
1, 1. That's called
This
an
is never
infinite
going to
loop.
exit. It's just always going to go.
It will
one,
just go on
one,
forever
one, one,
and
one, one.
ever, and
That's
look at
called
how
an infinite
beautiful
loop.
this is. It just keeps
And it
going.
will just go on forever and ever.
sooner or later,
Look
it's
at
just
how
gonna die.
beautiful this is. It just keeps going.
This is infinite. You see how
And
unresponsive it
sooner or
is?
later, it's
Oops.
just going to
I
die.
just killed my browser.
This is infinite. You see
All right,
how unresponsive
thing
it
to
is?
note.
Oops.
Do not
I
do
just killed
this.
my browser.
If you are on the
All right,
Ubuntu instance,
thing
you
to note.
can use
Do not
Control.
do this. If
Nah,
you
it's
are
hanging.
on the Ubuntu instance, you can use Control.
If you're in the Ubuntu instance, you use
Yeah, it's
Control S. Oh, that's fun. I feel
If you're
my
in the
processor
Ubuntu
is
instance, you
going
use
crazy
Control
right now.
S.
So a
Oh,
good
it's fun. I
example of
hear my
this, we can go
processor just
on the
going
lecture
crazy
slide.
right now.
You can think about this as an auto factory.
So a good
where you
example
work
of
on the
this, we
same
can go
car
a little bit on
over
the
and over.
lecture slide. You can
never
think about this
switch
as an
it.
auto
That's
factory
what's happening.
where you
That
work on
plus
the same
statement
car
lets you
over
switch
and
the
over again.
vehicle.
You never switch it.
You can
That's
also
what's
think of
happening.
it as
That
a
plus
movie
statement
theater.
lets you switch
Like
the
you're replaying the same code
You can
over and
also
over again.
think of it
If
as
the
a
code
movie
doesn't
theater.
change somewhat,
Like
you're
you're
basically
replaying the
think the
same
movie
code
stopped.
over and over
And then
again.
you're like,
If the code doesn't
my
change
TV
somewhat,
is not
you
buffering properly.
basically think the
It
movie
stopped.
stopped.
There's no
And then you're
updates.
like,
It just keeps
My
going
TV
on and
is
on and
not
on. So you
buffering
need some
properly.
kind of condition
It's
to
stuck.
move the
There's no
frame.
updates. It just keeps going on and on and on. So you need
And
some
so we
kind
have
of
some
condition to
exercises
move the frame
here.
along. And so we have
That's
some exercises
double-checking.
here.
Almost done. So these are some quick
That's
exercises
double-checking.
here.
Almost done. So these are some quick
They're
exercises
very
here.
simple. Can you write a loop to counter at 1 million? My
They're very
recommendation is
simple.
start with 10.
Can you write a loop to counter?
Why do I say
1
start with
million?
10?
My
Because if you start with
recommendation
10,
is start with 10.
all it is a variable change.
Why do I say start with 10? Because if you start
The
with
second
10,
one
all it is
is
a
can
variable
you
change
modify the
by
code
1
so it only prints even
million.
numbers?
The second one
So there's this concept
is
called
can you
modulus,
modify
which
the
is a
code
percent.
so it
So
only
if you
prints
percent
even numbers?
two, it will
So
test
there's
if
this
it's
concept
even
called
or odd.
modulus, which is a percent.
I think
so if
even
you
is
present
0,
2,
odd is 1.
it will test if it's
And then
even or odd.
the most this is probably
Take even
one
is
of the more
0, odd
complicated
is
things.
1.
You can
And
nest
then
while loop.
the most this
So
is
you
probably
could print
one
the
of the more
sequence 1 to
complicated
10
things is you
100
can
times a day.
nest
It's
while
50.
loops. So you
So those
could
are
print
the
the sequence 1
exercises.
to 10 100 times, 1,000,000 times, 50 times.
Now I'll
So
wait
those are
till
the
12:44
exercises.
if you guys want to try those out.
Now I'll wait till 12:44 if you guys want to try those out.
And then after this, there should be 2 more exercises. There's 2 more exercises in that.
And then after
There's a
this, there
practice
should be
problem.
2 more exercises. There's 2 more exercises, and then
And I'll just
there's
stick
a
around a
practice
little while
problem.
for the practice problem in case people want to try it out.
And I'll just stick
The
around a
practice
little
problem
while
kind
for
of
the practice
combines
problem in case
everything in
people
the
want to
class
try it
into
out.
something. That's
The practice
that's
problem
more
kind of
complicated.
combines
It's like
everything in the
sense
class into something
of a
that's
computer
a
program.
bit more complicated, but you start getting kind of a sense of a computer program being created for a factory.
So I don't know. Oh, okay, cool. So I'll go through the exercises real quick. So the first one is, can you make a loop that counts from 1 to
I'll go
a
through
million,
the
right?
exercises real quick. So the first one is,
And
can you
I'm
make a loop
assuming,
that
yep,
counts
they
from
killed
1 to
it.
a
So
million,
exercise 1,
and I'm assuming, yep, they killed it. So
I equals 1, that's
exercise
just our
1,
count, start of our count, while I is less or equal to
I equals 1, that's just our
1
count,
million.
start of our count, while I is less or equal to
We're just going to print it.
1 million.
And then we need our update condition.
We're just going to print it.
We click
And then
it.
we need our update condition.
Boom. It's going to count to 1,000,000.
And
it's going to take a while. It's much faster on
It's gonna count to
Ubuntu,
1,000,000.
but it will
And it's going to take a while.
hopefully terminate.
It's much faster on Ubuntu.
But it is, because
but
it's not
it
running on a
will
website,
hopefully
it's not going to be that
terminate.
fast. Right, it's got
It
to
is, because it's
respond.
not running on a website.
Ooh, no,
It's not gonna
it
be
is
that
slowing
fast.
down. Okay.
Right, it's got to respond. Ooh, no.
All right, I will be
it's
doing our
slowing
examples
down.
for 100,000.
All right,
It will
be doing our
terminate.
Examples for 100,000.
Okay, evidently it's not like that. So we'll do
It will
100,000. If
terminate.
you run it on a computer, it will be fine.
Okay, evidently.
There you go,
it did
ran
not
for
like that.
100,000.
So we'll do 100,000. If you run it on a computer, it will be
Much
fine.
faster. If you run it on
There you
your
go,
actual
ran for
computer, it will be
100,000.
faster because it's running directly.
Much faster. If you
Yeah,
run it on
you're not
a
having to-
computer, it will be faster because it's running.
Yeah, it's 200,000 now.
Yeah. you're
So
not
what
having
about
to-
you only print even numbers? So this is a test for evenness
So
right
what
here.
about you only print
That will
even
test if it's
numbers?
even.
So
So
this
this
is
will
a
only
test
count
for
even
evenness
numbers. We're
right
only
here.
doing 100,000. The web server
That
can't
will test
respond
if it's
quick enough
even.
on
So
their
this will
side.
only count even numbers. We're only doing 100,000.
And see, it's only
so the
counting
web
on
server can't
twos.
respond quick enough on their side.
You guys see that? And then
See,
I
it's
wanted
only
to show
counting
just
on
a nested
twos.
while loop. Generally,
You
we
guys see
try
that?
to avoid nesting while loops
And then I
because
wanted
they
to
take
show just the
very,
nested while
very
loop.
long to do
Generally,
stuff.
we try to avoid nested
Generally
while loops
speaking,
because they
one of
take
the
very,
exercises
very
in a
long
Python
to do
book
stuff.
I was dealing with was
Generally
talking about
speaking, one of the
quadruple nested
exercises
while
in a
loop,
Python book I
and
was
it wasn't
dealing with
pretty.
was talking about quadruple.
So we'll
nested
do
while
a sequence
loop.
1 through 10.
And
We'll
it
print it
wasn't
100
pretty.
times to the computer.
So we'll do
We'll start
a
our loop
sequence
with
1
1.
through 10. We'll print it
So
100
we'll
times
print
to
it
the
100 times.
computer.
The times to print.
We'll start our loop with 1.
We'll
So we'll
show
print
that it
100
actually
times,
prints.
So times to print. We'll show that it
And
actually
we will
prints.
start our sequence here. And then we'll print 10
And then we will
times
start
within
our
here.
sequence.
Remember, this is a while loop, so
And then we'll
this inner
print
circle is
10
printing
times within
100
here.
times.
Remember, this is a while loop, so this
We're going to do
inner
print
circle
J,
is printing
and then we're
100
updating our update condition here.
We're going to do print J,
And then
we're
here we
updating
have an update condition.
our update condition here.
Remember to press Control C
And then
if you're on
here
your
we have an
computer
update condition.
if it gets into an infinite loop.
And remember to press Control C if you're on your computer.
This one is
if it gets
interesting,
into
so
an
it's going to
infinite
print 1 through 10 100 times.
loop. This one is interesting, so it's going to
So
print
times
1
1,
through 10.
1 to 10, times
100
2,
times.
1 to 10. And here's the 100th
So
time.
times 1, 1 to 10. Times
We could do
2,
1,000, yeah.
No,
1
that's
to
just
10.
what I want.
And here's the 100th time.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna
We
well,
could
it's
do
gonna
1,000,
print
yeah.
No, that's
it's
just
gonna
what I
print
want.
the times line 100
Yes.
times, and it's gonna print
Yeah, it's gonna-
the
well,
1
it's
through
gonna
10
print-
1,000 times.
It's going to print
So it should be
the
1,100
times line
lines.
100 times. It's going to print the 1 through 10.
Actually,
1,000
and
times.
if
So it
well,
should be
I'm not gonna do it here.
1,100 lines.
If we were doing it on the computer, we could actually
actually
use a
if-
one-liner
well,
to
I'm
find
not
out
gonna
how
do
many
it.
lines it would
If
be.
we were doing it on the computer, we could actually.
But you guys
actually
understand
use
how
a
that
one-liner
works?
to
So
find
the
out
first
how many
loop is going to
lines.
just tell it to go 100 times. The update
But
condition
you guys
is at the
understand
very
how
end.
that works? So the first
So the
loop is
I
gonna
equals
tell
I
it
plus
to
1
go
is still
100
part of
times.
that
The
first
update
conditional
condition is
block.
at the very end.
Then the j equals
So
1
the I
part.
equals I plus
Every
1 is
time
still
the
part of
first
that
while
first
block
conditional
starts,
block.
it initializes
Then
it
the
to
j
1,
equals 1
and then
part.
it does the
Every
counting,
time
and
the
within
first
that
while
second
block
level
starts, it
block, you have the
initializes
j
it to
equals
1,
j plus 1.
And then it does the counting.
So that second
and
conditional
within
block
that
is going to
second
increment
level
it to
block, you have the
10.
j equals j plus 1. So that second conditional block is going to increment it to
When I was
10.
reading the question was print 1 to 10 in a row. Is there a way to enable?
Yeah, you could
Print 1 to 10 in a
what
row.
you would do.
Is a-
Well, the easiest way to do it would just
Yeah,
be
you
to
could,
do a while loop
What you would
1
do,
to 10,
well, the
and
easiest
then
way
just
to
print
do
that
it
100
would
times,
just
right?
do
That'd be like
a
the
while
easiest
loop
way,
1
but
to
for
10.
demonstration
And then just print that
purposes,
100
just
times, right?
that's why that's there. And actually,
That'd be
if
like the
we
easiest
go do
way,
a
but
programming
for
interview, they will
demonstration
tell you to do it in 2 separate
that's
while
why
loops
that's there.
because
And
it's much
actually,
more
if
efficient.
you go do a programming interview, they'll
But
tell you to do
again,
two
I want to
separate
show
while
this like
loops because
behavior
it's
where
much
you
more
can
efficient.
nest things because
Um,
that can
but
be used. That
again,
can be
I want to
useful.
show this like
Just like
behavior
another
where you can
interesting
nest
thing,
things, 'cause
you notice
that
how
can
when
be
you're
used-
dealing
that
with
can be
Facebook,
useful.
you
Just
go to
like
a
another
URL and it
interesting
retrieves
note,
a web page.
You notice how when you're dealing
Behind
with
the scenes,
Facebook,
there's a while loop
you go to
that's
a
doing
URL
that.
and it retrieves a
So
web
when you
page.
a concept called a name
Behind the
or
scenes,
something
there's a
like that,
while loop
it's a
that's
while
doing
loop
that.
with some kind of
So
access
whenever you
point
hear
where
this
you
concept concept called
pushed or
or
pulled
something like that.
information.
It's a while loop with some kind of access
Question on
point
the
where you
terms
can
statement
push or
say
pull
percent S.
information.
The always represent as whatever is an integer or string or
Yeah, so the S stands for
The
string,
always
so
represent
it's
as whatever
string of
is integer
substitution.
or string or.
so
So the S stands for string.
Yeah,
right? So
but
it's a
because
string
it's
of
an S and not, since it's percent %S, not percent %I,
it?
it does
Yeah,
a
but
string
because it's
substitution.
an S and not
So
since
it
it's
implicitly
not
converts it
percent
to
I,
a string.
It does a
Yeah.
string substitution.
Okay,
it
so I hope that
implicitly
made
converts it
sense.
to a string.
Yeah. There's a few cool keywords you
Okay,
can
so
use with
I
while
hope that
loops,
made
which are
sense.
kind of interesting.
Um,
They are break,
There's a few
continue,
cool
and
keywords
pass.
you can use with while loops,
What
which are
when
kind
you
of
use break in
interesting.
a while loop,
They
it
are
will
break,
break out of the
continue,
loop.
and pass.
So if the minute it sees break,
when
it
you
just breaks
use
out of the
break
loop and
in a
doesn't do
while
it
loop,
anymore.
it will break out of the loop.
Continue
So
is similar to a
minute it
break,
sees
but what it does is it
breaks
starts
out of
over
loop
the
and doesn't do it
condition.
anymore.
So if it hits continue, it ignores
is
all
similar
other
to a
code and
break,
goes to the
but
top
what it does is
and
it starts
restarts.
over the condition.
Continue
So
can be
if it
very
hits
dangerous
continue, it
because if you
ignores
don't
all
have the
other code and
update
goes to the
condition
top
before the
and
continue,
restarts.
it will continue forever.
Continue can be very dangerous because if
And when
you
I
don't
was
have
doing the
update
example, I wasn't
before
paying
the
attention,
continue,
and I actually did that. I forgot to put the update
And when I
condition
was
before
doing
the
the
continue.
example, I
And
wasn't
what
paying
ended up
attention,
happening is it
and I
infinitely
actually did
looped,
that.
and I was like,
forgot to put the
like
update
prototyping.
condition before the continue. And what ended up happening is
Another
it infinitely
interesting
looped,
fact,
and
I
I was
actually use
like
continue at
prototyping.
work, and what I use it for
Another
is
kind
I
of
deploy
interesting fact is I
servers
actually use
on a
continue
regular
at
basis,
work,
so I'll deploy
and
computers,
what I use it for
and
is
for
I
certain
deploy
conditions,
servers
if it
on a
doesn't
regular
meet some
basis,
requirement,
so I'll deploy
I will
computers,
just tell it to skip
and
over
for
these
certain conditions, if it doesn't meet some requirements.
So I think
will
for
just tell
this
it
one, I'm
skip
just going to
over
show it
those
on the
conditions.
screen because it's pretty easy to understand.
So I
So
think
for this
one,
example,
I'm just going to show it on
the
screen
while has a
because
true
it's
condition, so you would
pretty
think
easy
it
to
would go
understand.
forever, right?
So for this example,
But in
the
this
while
case,
has a
we have
true
this if condition
so you would think it would
afterwards
go
that says
forever,
if
right?
I equals 5, then
But
break.
in this
So in
case,
this
we
case,
have
it's
this
just going
if
to print to
condition
5,
afterwards that
and then
says
it's going to
if
break
I
out of that.
equals 5, then break.
Yeah, let's
So in
actually
this case,
show
it's
it.
just going to print to 5.
I think it's
and then
easier,
it's going to break
right?
out of that loop.
So we'll print
Yeah, let's
example
actually
1.
show
It
it.
just shows you a break
I think
condition.
it's easier.
I equals 0.
So
This
for
would
example
normally
one, it just shows
infinitely
you a
loop,
break condition.
right?
I equals 0.
But we're going
This
to use the
would
break
normally
to prematurely
infinitely
close
loop.
the loop.
Right? But we're going to use the break to prematurely close the loop.
And then we're just going to break. And then we will put the else condition here,
And then we're just going to break.
save, and we'll run it,
then
and you
we
see
will
it only
put the
runs
else
to
condition
5.
Here, save, and we'll run it.
For
and
the
you see it only
continue
runs to
statement,
5.
very similar,
Um,
except for our continue example,
For the continue
we
statement,
will just,
very similar.
skip
except
over a
for our
number.
continue example,
so if it is
we
5,
will just skip over a number. So if it is 5,
and remember I have to have the update condition before the continue, otherwise it goes on infinitely.
remember I have to have the update.
And then we have the update
before the
condition
continue,
here if
otherwise
it's
it
not
goes
equal to
on
5.
Infinitely.
And this should
And then we have the
go through
update
1 to 10
condition
and we'll
here
skip
if
5.
it's not equal to 5.
Where's the syntax error?
And this should go through 1 to 10
There
and
it
we'll
is.
skip 5.
Boom.
Where's the syntax error?
You see there's no 5 there, right? It goes from 4 to
There it
6.
is. Boom.
And I did
You see
mention
there's no
something
5
called
there, right?
pass.
It goes from 4 to 6.
And pass is really simple. You have if conditions and you don't
And I did
want to
mention
execute
something
a block
called
yet.
pass.
This is used for
And
prototyping.
pass
So
is
I have a
very
while
simple. You
loop,
have if condition,
and my
but you
if
don't
condition
want
is
to
just
execute a block
crazy.
yet.
I just don't
So
want
this is
to
used for
deal with it, but I
prototyping.
need
So
to
I have a
have
while
it in the
loop,
code,
and my
and I'm
if
going to write
condition
on
is
it later
crazy.
on.
I just
So
don't
I'll
want to
use the
deal with
pass
it, but I
statement.
need
So I'll
to
say
have it
if
in the code,
I equals
and I'm gonna
1,
write on it
then
later.
pass. And then
So
I'll come
use the
back
pass
later on,
statement.
and
So
where
I'll
that
say
pass
if
statement is,
I
I will
equals 1,
rewrite code it.
then pass. And
So
then I'll
pass
come
is kind of
back
like an
later
empty
on,
block
and
of
where that
code.
pass
It doesn't
statement
do
is, I will
anything. It's just a
rewrite code in
placeholder.
there. So pass is kind of like
So
an
it's just
empty
useful
block
for
of code. It doesn't
prototyping.
do
It's
anything.
mentioned on
It's just a placeholder.
keywords that you can use
So that's
with
just
conditional
useful for
blocks.
prototyping. It's mentioned on keywords that you can
And then
use
there's
with
2 real
conditional
quick
blocks.
examples where you can use while with an if, and I have
And then
another
there's
example,
2 real
an
quick
if with a
examples,
while. And this is where
you
you're going to
use
start
while
seeing
with
the
an
really
if,
cool,
and I have
complicated
another example,
behavior. So I
an
mentioned
if
about a
with a while.
factory that
And
produces
this is
3
where you're going
different
to start
vehicles,
seeing
right?
really cool
This code
complicated
logic right
behavior.
here,
So I
we
mentioned
have 3
about a
different
factory that
vehicles. We're
produces
going to
3
produce
different
500
vehicles, right?
total.
This
And we're
code
going to
logic
just
right
use
here,
the
you have 3
remainder
different vehicles.
of
We're gonna
dividing
produce
it by
500
3 to
total.
assign
And we're gonna
one of
just
3
use the,
vehicles equals to it.
remainder.
And then when it
of
has that
dividing it by
vehicle
3
type,
to
it's
assign
going to then print
one
it
of
out.
3
So what this will end up
vehicles
doing is it will
and then when
rotate
it has that
between 3
vehicle
different
type,
types of vehicles.
it's going to then print it out. So what this will end up doing is it will rotate between 3 different types of vehicles.
So vehicle ID equals 1, max
So-
number of vehicles
Vehicle ID equals 1.
equals
Max
500.
number of vehicles.
I'm going to just say V1 is Mustang. The reason I use Mustang is I used to have a Mustang.
I'm going to just say V1 is Mustang.
So that's
The
why.
reason I use Mustang is I used to
I have a
Mustang.
Civic, which is my girlfriend's car.
So that's why.
And then the
I
Ninja,
have a
which
Civic,
is an old
which is my
motorcycle I
girlfriend's
used to
car.
have.
And
And
the
then
Ninja,
usually you have a line item, so that's just your report. So I'm going to just say vehicle
usually
percent
you have a line
S
item,
is
so
a
that's just your
percent
report.
S.
I'm
So,
going to just say
you know, the vehicle number 1 is
percent
a
S is
blah,
a
blah, blah.
percent S.
So for
you know, the vehicle number 1
while
is
the
a
vehicle ID
blah, blah, blah.
is less or
So
equal to the max
for
number of vehicles, so
While
we're going
the
to loop
vehicle ID
500
is
times,
less or
right?
equal to the max number of
If
vehicles, so
the
we're
vehicle
gonna
ID
loop 500 times,
divided by
right?
3 is 0,
If
we're going to say the
vehicle
vehicle,
ID
we're going to just call it the V type,
divided by 3 is 0,
is going to be the first
we're going
vehicle.
to say the vehicle, we're going to just call it the
Else,
V type
if
is
the
going
vehicle
to be
type
the first
ID 3,
Else
1,
if
we're going to say the V
vehicle
type is
ID
the
3,
Civic, and
1,
then
we're going
that's
to say
technically
the
we
V
could do an
type
else
is
statement here, right?
the Civic,
So we could do V type
guess
equals
technically we do an else
V2,
statement here,
right?
So we
And
could do
then
V
I want to
type
actually print that
equals
this is
V2,
happening, so I need to
right?
have the print statement, and then we're going to substitute
And then I
the
wanna
vehicle
actually
ID in
print that
here,
this is happening, so I need to
and
have
the
print statement, and
vehicle
then we're gonna
type.
substitute the vehicle ID in here, and the vehicle type.
and then we need to have some update statement, right? And then, oops,
And then we need to have some update
Oh,
statement,
come on.
right?
and then we're going to cool down
And
the
then-
factory.
oops. Oh, come on. And
If
then
we
we're gonna
write
cool down
this,
the
you'll
factory.
see it oscillates, so every 3 vehicles is something else. So it starts
If we
with
write
Mustang,
this, you'll see
prints
it
the-
oscillates, so
prints the-
every 3 vehicles is something else.
and it does
So it
that
starts
over
with
and over.
Mustang, prints a Civic.
So now
prints
you
a
have
Ninja.
3 different lines of logic, 3 different
Does
branches
that over and over again.
of a while loop,
So
and
now
3
you
different
have 3
cases that are
different
running
lines
over
of
and over and
logic,
over
3
again.
different branches of a while
The
loop,
alternative,
3
the
different
second
cases that are
example,
running over and
is
over and over.
something most people are familiar with,
The
driving a car,
alternative, the second
and you're
example
looking at the
is,
speedometer, and you're trying to
something
get to
that most
65
people are
miles per
familiar
hour.
with,
If
driving
you're
a
greater,
car, and
greater
you're
than
looking at
65
the
miles per hour,
speedometer,
you're going to
and
speed
you're
down.
trying to get to 65 miles per hour. If you're greater than 65 miles per hour, you're going to speed down.
So in this case, it's it's the speed plus equals
So in this case, it's it's
the
the
vehicle
speed
ID plus
plus
1.
equals
Oh, we have my eyes.
Yeah.
the vehicle ID.
So I'll do this example real quick. The speed starts at 0. The speedometer equals.
So I'll do this.
This is what it
example real
says.
quick. The
Current
speed
speed,
starts at 0,
percent
the
S,
speedometer
MPH,
equals- This is
I
what it
don't do
says.
substitution.
Print speed.
and then if the
S,
speed is greater or
MPH,
equal to
I don't do
65,
substitution. And then
We're
if
gonna
the
do a
speed
while
is
loop,
greater
we're gonna take the
or equal to
speed.
65.
if it's less than 65, we're
we're
gonna
gonna do a
increase
while
the
loop.
speed
We're gonna take the speed.
by
If
1,
it's less than
and
65,
then we need to have the
we're
speedometer
gonna
update.
increase the speed by 1. And then we need to have the speedometer update.
And then for the else statement, that's when the speed is
And
lesser,
then for
is greater
the
than
else
65, we're going to decrement, right?
that's when the speed is lesser.
So we're going to decrease
is
the
greater
speed
than
by 1.
65. We're going to decrement.
And then we're going to print the speedometer.
So we're going to decrease the speed by 1. And then we're going to.
Now we have an if statement which leads to 2 different while loops. And now we're finally at
So now
65
we have an
miles
if
per hour.
statement which leads.
So this
to
is what
2
happens
while
with
loops.
speedometer, right?
And now we're finally at.
So you start
65
with
miles
1 mile
per
per hour.
So this is what happens with
speeding up until
speedometer,
you hit
right?
65, and then you're at 65 miles per
So you
hour.
start with 1 mile
If you're
per hour,
over 100,
you keep
let's say
speeding
we're
up
at
until you get
1,000 miles per
65
hour,
and you're at
because we're
65
crazy.
miles per hour. If you're over 100,
Now it's going
let's
from
say we're
1,000
at
miles per
1,000
hour,
miles
and it's going to
because we're
decrease
crazy.
1 over 1 over 1 over 1
Now
until
it's
you
going
get
from
to
1,000 miles per
65.
hour, and it's going to
So you can use
1 over 1 over 1
if
over
state
1
whiles with
until
if
you get to
statements with whiles.
So you can use
A lot of the complex
if
logic
state
you see in
whiles with if
servers, a
statements.
lot of that
if
stuff
statements with
is
whiles.
done at this type of
A
level.
lot
where
of
it's
the
a lot of
complex
while and
logic
if
you see in
statements.
servers, a lot of that stuff.
A lot of what I
is
do
done at this type
at
of
work
level
on a
with
regular
a lot
basis
of while and if
is-
statements.
that
a
type
lot
of
of what I
logic
do
is
at
very
work on a
present.
regular basis is.
And
that
then
type of logic
this is just a
very
uh,
present.
practice exercise.
And then
I'll
is just
stay
a
around for
practice,
that. But just for people
practice
who
exercise,
maybe might be a rush, the next one's going to be an
I'll stay around
application
for that.
class.
But
So
just for
you saw the
people
later
who,
exercises.
maybe might be a
where
rush. The next one's going to be an applications class. So
we're
you
going
saw
to
the later exercises.
3 or 4
where
applications
we're
that just do that
defining
type of
if
logic.
while
And
loops.
the idea behind
We're
that
gonna
is
be
it's
doing
hands-on.
a lot-
I'm just going to
3 or
sit
4
here.
applications
I'll
that
put an
just do that type
application
of
up
logic.
maybe
And the
every
idea behind that is
hour or
it's
so,
hands-on.
like
I
maybe
can
once
sit
an
here.
hour, I will
I'll put
actually
an
show people how I
application
build
every
it, but it's kind of
hour or
up to
so,
everybody
like
else
maybe
to
once
see
an
how they
hour,
can
I
handle
will
it.
actually show
Maybe a
people
TA
how
or
I
somebody
build
will
it,
be in the
but
room to
it's
help
kind
you.
of up to
That's kind of more of an open
everybody else to
hands
see
type
how they can
project.
handle it. Maybe a
And that's
TA or
because
somebody
we're now
will be
starting to
in the
get to
room
these
help you.
really
That's
complicated
kind of more of an
logic
open
systems,
hands type project.
and you really have to get
And that's
more hands-on
because we're
for
now
that
starting
type
to
of
get to
stuff.
these really complicated
I also have, like usual, a
and you really
survey,
have to get
so
more hands-on for that type of
I
stuff.
take every survey very seriously.
I also
So
have
if
like
you
usual
have
a
comments,
survey,
it was
so
too wordy,
I take
you
every
thought
survey
it was
very
too much code,
seriously,
there's
so
too little
if you
code.
have comments,
You know,
it's
I
too
really don't
wordy,
like the examples. The
you
examples
thought
are
there's
good.
too much
and
code,
that
there's too
item,
little
the
code.
next
You
procedure.
know, I really don't like the example.
And then for those people who want to
Any
do
feedback gets tied
the
up
practice
in the
problem,
procedure.
basically the output's going to look like
And
this.
then
You're
for
going to have
those
an
people who
order
wanna do
ID,
the practice
and
problem,
then you're going to have 3
basically the
different
output's gonna
products.
look like
And
this. You're gonna have
so
an
for
order
pasta, when you order
ID,
pasta, you get
and
3
then
boxes of
you're gonna
pasta.
have 3 different
And
products.
on an assembly
So
line, it
for
would
pasta,
pop
when
out
you
3
order
pastas. So I
you
want
get
to
3
see that.
boxes of pasta.
If I have
On an
cheese, let's say
assembly
I
line,
make
it
2
would
pounds of
pop out
cheese.
3
So
pastas,
on the
so I
assembly
wanna
line,
see
2
that.
cheeses should
If
pop
I
out.
have cheese,
If I
let's
make
say I make
sauce,
2 pounds
only
of
1
cheese,
will pop up.
so on the assembly line, 2
So that's
cheeses
kind
should
of the
pop up.
idea behind it.
If I make
So you'll have
sauce,
output
only
like
1 will
that.
pop up.
That's the
So that's
expectation,
kind of the idea
and that's
behind
the
it.
problem.
So you'll have output like that. It's the expectation, and that's the problem answer.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll be here for like a little longer, in case people want to try the practice problem.
Yeah,
for
so
like
what I'll
15
do is
minutes.
I'll
But if
be
you
here
want
for, like, a
to
little longer,
really
in
quickly,
case people want to try the practice problem for like
we could
15
wrap up
minutes,
things.
but
So
if
I'll
you
be here
wanna
for a little while longer.
really
though.
quickly, we could wrap up things. I'll be here for a little while longer though.
Is it possible? Do you have a computer up? Because otherwise, I gotta log in. That involves me not knowing what
Is
I'm
it
doing.
possible? Do you have a computer up?
That's fine.
'Cause
Yeah.
otherwise, I gotta log in.
Yeah, I'm mostly done. If you want to, you can take over.
That's fine.
I'll just flip over my computer
Yeah,
afterwards for the
I'm
practice
mostly
problem.
done. If you want to, you can take over. I'll just
You
flip
can
over my
either
computer
go
after for the practice.
You can either go to our, you can sit here, I'll just go to our. You can either go to our, you can sit here, just go to our.
Eventbrite?
Yeah. Just like how can I go to our Eventbrite page.
Eventbrite?
Yeah, just type health and awareness Eventbrite page.
This one, I think, right?
This one.
First one sounds good.
This one.
So
I
let's
think.
go to the. Let's go
First one
to.
sounds good. Yeah.
What happened? Python.
So let's go to
Task. Click on
the.
task. Right
Let's
there.
go to.
Ah, there they
What
are.
happened? Python.
Is that the one?
classes, we're not
No, that
gonna
is,
see task.
that's
Click on
one of
task.
them.
Right there.
Scroll down. No, scroll down. There's main class.
Is that the one? No, that is
That's
October
one.
20. Scroll down. No, scroll down. There's many classes over there.
Go up. Right there.
Intro
What
to
is that? October 9.
what is Goba? Right there. What is that? October 9. No, that is October 9.
Scroll down.
Are you trying to get to like
Scroll down.
Slack or?
Music.